Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. When my archer talent is maxed out, I will kill all races. Chapter 1. The weather in Jincheng in August is like a giant steamer. The muggy weather makes people sleepy. There were cicadas chirping incessantly on the trees outside the window of a classroom in the second martial arts high school, making it annoying. The ceiling fan above my head was humming. But he still couldn't dispel the tense atmosphere in the classroom at this moment. Chen Qi's hands hidden under the table were tightly clasped together, his eyes were full of anger, and his lips were bitten by his teeth, and a trace of blood oozed out. The pain on his face, arms, and neck could not dispel the anger in his heart. The surrounding students looked at the angry Chen Qi quietly, some with sarcasm in their eyes, some with pity in their expressions, and some who couldn't bear to see Chen Qi's appearance, but they were afraid of the person standing in front of Chen Qi, so they could only choose to pretend not seen. In front of him, a handsome young man, wearing a school uniform, with a high-spirited expression, lowered his head and looked down at Chen Qi, who was sitting in his seat. The sinister eyes ruined the handsome features, and there was a bruise on his cheek. There was a unique condescending air in his voice. Chen Qi, have you thought about it? Quit school or lose money. Listening to the words coming out of the young man in front of him, Chen Qi just wanted to slap the man in front of him hard on the face. But he can't. He is just an awakened E-level talented archer. Even if he is strong, he is no match for the young man and the loser in front of him. Just yesterday, the young man in front of him took the initiative to provoke him, and then got entangled with several people and beat Chen Qi. However, he could not control his emotions for a moment and punched the young man in front of him in the face. It was this simple punch that put Chen Qi and his family into a desperate situation. At first, he hoped that the principal would give him justice. But when he saw with his own eyes the principal, whom he expected to seek justice for him, bowing slightly to greet the young father, he knew that justice was gone. The words that came out of his mouth made Chen Qi completely lose hope in the principal. Why did you fight back? Why don't you run? I was defending myself. Chen Qi was angry. Self-defense. Is this obviously a fight? The principal's cold eyes made Chen Qi sober up. The justice he wants cannot be obtained here. A principal, responsible for teaching and educating people, actually protected the abuser so openly. Even in his opinion, Chen Qi shouldn't fight back and should be beaten. And all this is just because the father of the young man in front of him is the deputy leader of the largest hunting group in Jincheng City. He is powerful in the martial arts realm and provides tens of millions of sponsorship fees to this second martial arts master every year. The source of all this is just because Chen Qihei said something to the girl he admired. Here, weakness and poverty are original sins. As long as you are poor and weak, even breathing is wrong. What? Is it possible that your family can really afford 1 million? The corners of the young man's lips were raised slightly, a trace of sneer hanging on the corners of his mouth, and there was no concealed disdain in his eyes looking down. Your father will not be able to make up 1 million just by digging out the sewers until he dies. What a bunch of poor people. You don't have to drop out of school. I have plenty of time to play with you. I heard that you have a poor younger sister and younger brother, right? The words from the young man's mouth fell into Chen Qi's ears, making him even more angry and his whole body trembling. Every word made Chen Qi's anger intensify. Li Ji, shut up. He roared angrily, suddenly looked up at the superior Li Ji in front of him, gritted his teeth and said, I can drop out of school, but you can't pursue this matter anymore, let alone take action against my sister and brother. A wise choice. Li Ji smiled scornfully and nodded in agreement. It's dirty my hands to attack poor people like you. The main reason why he attacked Chen Qi was because Chen Qi was too close to the girl he wanted to get. Ever since he was young, he would get whatever he wanted no matter what method he used. The same goes for women. People like Chen Qi were not worth mentioning in his opinion. They were from a poor family and had no outstanding talents. They were just ordinary people. But this is how he does things, and he will completely wipe out any possible accidents. Chen Qi dropped out of school and left, which was the result he wanted. As for what he promised Chen Qi just now, it all depends on his mood. Watching Li Ji and others leaving, Chen Qi slowly let go of his hand and sat back on the chair, staring blankly at the ceiling fan spinning above his head, his eyes dull. In the world of high martial arts, everyone has the opportunity to awaken their own talents. combat talents, healing talents, and amplification talents. The three major talents established the entire cultivation system of the high martial arts world. Each talent is divided into different levels, from the lowest F level talent to the highest 3S level talent. What he awakened was an E level combat talent, Archer, which was only slightly higher than F. The boy in front of him has an S level combat talent, Wind attribute. The special ability to control elements is destined to be stronger and more promising than him. The gap in talent has been completely widened from the moment of awakening. Like a natural moat, clear hierarchy. If my awakened talent is stronger and reaches B level, or even A level, will I be able to get the justice I want? Chen Qi's eyes were dull and his mind was confused. The naked reality is before him, B grade. A grade, not enough. He didn't know how he left school. The crowd after school overwhelmed him, and the E-level talent was destined to become an ordinary person. An advertisement for military recruitment was posted at the school gate. Chen Qi stood in front of the recruitment advertisement, clenching his fists. The E-level talent was destined to miss Wuhan University. If he wanted to change his family situation, the recruitment advertisement in front of him seemed to be his only choice. Meeting the conditions for dropping out of school, deciding to join the army, and triggering the system activation conditions. Current talent. E-level, Archer, match the corresponding talent. Matching successful, current matching talent, 3S talent Huyi. Following the sudden voice in his mind, a light curtain appeared in front of him. As this, Chen Qi was stunned, and then he came to his senses. The light screen in front of him clearly showed his situation. Goldfinger appears. His nails dug deeply into his palms, and Chen Qi's whole body was trembling slightly. He looked up at the surging crowd in front of him, glanced coldly at Li Ji in the crowd, and turned to leave. He is not in a hurry to take revenge on Li Ji, the principal of the Second Martial Arts High School, Li Ji's father. These people are the targets of his revenge. Chen Qi comes from a poor family. His father is a sewer dredger, and his mother is an ordinary woman who usually sells snacks in a small cart. There is also a sister and a brother at home. The family of 3 children made this already poor family even worse. Over the years, the 3 brothers and sisters grew up quietly. Originally, Chen Qi wanted to become a warrior after awakening his talent and lighten the burden on his family. But what happened to Li Ji made this already poor family crumbling, like a broken ship in a storm. A single wave is enough to destroy a family. The walls of the community have long been stained by the wind and rain, and even the iron doors of the units in the community are crumbling from the kicks of people who usually go home and have nowhere to vent. Stepping up the stairs, Chen Qi smelled the aroma of food wafting from home, took a deep breath, inserted the key, and opened the door. "Mom, I'm back." As soon as he opened the door, a figure in the living room fell into his eyes. The usually straight waist looked a little rickety in the dim light. "Dad." "Yeah." The father, who was sitting on the shabby sofa, nodded slightly. The pungent smell of low-quality tobacco filled the entire living room. The mother in the kitchen leaned out, smiled lovingly at Chen Qiqi, and said softly, "Wash your hands and get ready to eat. My brother and sister haven't gone home yet because they got out of school late. I pinched some for my younger siblings." At the dinner table, the 3 of them were silent. The father spoke first. "Why did we fight yesterday?" After the words fell, her mother glanced at Chen Qi quietly, placed the bowls and chopsticks in her hands gently on the table, and sighed in her heart. Chen Qi raised his head and looked at his father who had raised him for more than 10 years. He knew very well what kind of temper his father had. He was very strong-willed, never said soft words, and had a bad temper. "Dad, I dropped out of school." Chen Qi did not answer his father's question, but told him about dropping out of school. "What? You dropped out of school? Are you crazy?" Before his father could attack, his mother exclaimed, looking at Chen Qi in disbelief, her expression full of panic. "Yes." Chen Qi nodded, and without waiting for the 2 of them to speak further, he continued, "They will no longer pursue the case if you drop out of school. So you don't have to raise money, this matter is over." Listening to Chen Qi's words, his father's face became even more ugly. "Pa!" He slammed the table and shouted angrily at Chen Qi, "Who asked you to drop out of school? I took so much money, who allowed you to drop out of school?" When I go back to school, I have to spend 1 million even if I sell it. Dad. Chen Qi put down the bowls and chopsticks in his hands and looked up into his father's angry eyes. Our family doesn't have 1 million, so dropping out of school was the deal I made with him. No, you have to go back to school. What else can you do if you don't go to school? My father doesn't agree, and neither does my mother. Chen Qi shook his head and looked serious. I'm going to join the army. After saying that, regardless of his anger and wanting to hit his father, he said word for word, I fought yesterday because he scolded you. He called you a sewer maggot. Bang. The door was closed. Outside, my father and mother stood there blankly. My father was still yelling loudly, but his voice became quieter and quieter. Until the end, it turned into a soft whimper. The son stood up for himself, but he could not hold up an umbrella for his son to avoid the wind and rain. Name, Chen Qi. Realm, not yet entered. Physique, none. Talent, 3S talent Hui. Talent skills, 100 steps to pierce the yang. Hit rate increased by 100%. Archery comprehension, practicing any archery comprehension ability increases 100 times. Divine arrow, injecting qi and blood. Spiritual qi adds powerful penetrating ability to arrows. Next talent skill will be unlocked in the 3rd level of the warrior. Martial skills, none. Exercise, none. Weapon, none. As Chen Qi was lying on the bed, the light screen panel appeared in front of his eyes again. Staring at the information displayed on the light screen panel, he felt a little excited. 3S's talent is already the top talent. The E-level talent he awakened has disappeared, replaced by the 3S Hui talent. The talents of Gaowu World Institute range from F to 3S. The realm of a warrior is a 1st-level warrior, a 2nd-level warrior, a 3rd-level warrior, a 4th-level general. Each level is divided into 9 realms. As for Gao, Chen Qi didn't know either. The level of talent affects everyone's strength. No matter how hard he works with an E-level talent, he will probably be nothing more than a martial artist. The cultivation speed it can provide is also very small. But the cultivation speed that 3S talent can provide is different. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have suitable training resources at hand, Chen Qifei would have to try out how strong 3S's talent is now. Physical fitness and other things are useless. What he is most concerned about now is only the 3S talent. What is Hui? As far as he knew, he had never heard of Hui's 3S talent. 3S talent Hui, the ancestor of the long bow, who can shoot the sun with his bow. A simple introduction without any unnecessary words. But the look in Chen Qi's eyes really made him tremble. The ancestor of the long bow, he used his bow to shoot at the sun. Chen Qi is not the only person who has awakened his archer talent in the world of high martial arts. Whether in a hunting group or in the army, archers play a less important role, playing more of a combat auxiliary role. Although archers have the ability to strike from a distance, their attack methods are too simple. Once you encounter an enemy that is extremely fast and has long-range strike capabilities, the weakness of the archer will be exposed. His melee combat ability is insufficient and his attack ability is single. Once he is approached by an enemy, there is only one fate. No one has ever had the 3S archer talent. Chen Qi, who has the 3S talent, Hui, will definitely exceed everyone's imagination and completely change the world's thinking about the talent of archer. Nothing to say all night. I got up early. He must first go to school to complete the withdrawal procedures, and then go to the recruitment point to sign up. In the living room, my father, mother, sisters and brothers are all at home. When they saw Chen Qi walking out of the room, everyone's eyes fell on Chen Qi. Elder brother, sister Chen Yao and brother Chen Hao stood up and looked at Chen Qi with concern. The two of them already knew the news about Chen Qi dropping out of school from his father, Chen Zhijiang. Among the 3 brothers and sisters, Chen Qi is the eldest. Chen Yao and Chen Hao have just entered Wuchu and are not in the same school as Chen Qi. Brother, don't drop out of school. Let's go to the martial arts bureau. Chen Hao is the second among 3 siblings, and his temperament is somewhat similar to that of his father, Chen Zhijiang. What are you doing? He patted his brother Chen Hao on the shoulder, pinched his sister Chen Yao's face, and said with a smile, if you don't go to school, you won't be afraid that you won't be admitted to Wuhan University in the future. Brother, you are about to drop out of school. Girls always want to be a little more emotional. Seeing the smile on Chen Qi's face, her eyes filled with tears. I dropped out of school because I didn't want to study anymore. It's more honorable to join the army than to take the martial arts exam. Chen Qi explained with a smile. What he said was true. With the 3S talent, he would not return to the second martial arts high school. He chose to join the army to awaken the system. All this is true. Father Chen Zhijiang looked up at the three siblings, sighed softly, and put down the cigarette he was holding in his hand. You can drop out of school, but you can't join the army. Why? Chen Qi was stunned. His father's sudden decision made him confused for a while. The mother sat aside and opened her mouth, but did not speak. The father glanced at Chen Yao and Chen Hao. You go to school first, and I will talk to your brother. Oh, the two nodded, and Chen Yao wiped her tears. Brother. Be good, go quickly. After Chen Yao and Chen Hao left, his father Chen Zhijiang spoke. When you grow up, you can make your own choices, but joining the army is not an option. Even if you join a hunting group, I won't object. Dad, why? What's wrong with joining the army? Chen Qi still didn't know why his father objected. Chen Zhijiang did not speak, but picked up the cigarette on the table. Because it had been pinched for a long time, a lot of shredded tobacco had fallen off. He pinched the paper wrapped around the cigarette, lit it, and spoke. It's good to join the army, but it's not good for you. Your grandfather died in the army. Before he died, he once sent me a message that our family members were not allowed to join the army. Not anyone. The words that came out of his father's mouth made Chen Qi stunned. He once asked his father what his grandfather did before, but Chen Zhijiang never answered this question. Today was the first time he knew what his grandfather had done. Ignoring Chen Qi, Chen Zhijiang took out a puff of cigarette. The smoke filled his eyes and blurred his eyes. Although I don't know why your grandfather gave me this news, there must be a reason. The army is too dangerous, and I don't trust you. Chen Qi came back to his senses, and his heart trembled slightly after listening to his father's words. Looking into her mother's concerned eyes, she walked up to the old couple and said with serious expressions, Dad, although I don't know why Grandpa gave you this news, but joining the army is the only way I can get justice. It's good to join the hunting group, but it can't be compared to the power behind Li Ji. These words fell in Chen Zhijiang's ears, causing his movements to stagnate slightly. He took a deep drag on the cigarette, and the hand holding the cigarette was slightly harder, with a look of reluctance. But thinking about what Chen Qi said, he could only sigh in his heart. Dad, Mom. Chen Qi looked at his parents seriously. Their power is too powerful for us. Li Ji will never give up. He will most likely take action against you or Chen Yao and Chen Hao. The only way to protect you is to join the army. The military will take care of the families of soldiers. Only in this way can we protect our family. Hearing this, the mother couldn't help but grabbed her father's arm and said tremblingly, Daughter, they still unwilling to let you go. You dropped out of school, do they have to do this? The cigarette in his father's hand fell to the ground, and he raised his head suddenly with red eyes. They dare to touch you, and I will never let them have an easy time even if I risk my life. Chen Qi shook his head, reached out to hold his parents' hands, and said word for word, So for your safety, I have no choice but to join the army. I will definitely avenge this. 30 years in Hedong, 30 years in Hexi, Li Ji and the forces behind him, I will never let them go. A sentence that speaks volumes. The father and mother in front of them were silent for a long time. After a long time, the father Chen Zhijiang sighed, Go, join the army. The second martial arts high school in Jincheng. In the office of class teacher Jia Shuilin, listening to the decision made by Chen Qi, he felt mixed emotions in his heart. It was not that he had not reconciled the matter between Chen Qi and Li Ji. Although he is soft-spoken, he is just an ordinary class teacher. Faced with the power behind Li Ji and the identity of the principal, he can only sigh and be unable to protect Chen Qi. Chen Qi, what are you going to do about dropping out of school? Jia Shuilin's voice was dry. He looked up at Chen Qi, who looked calm in front of him, and asked after hesitation. Although Chen Qi's talent was not good, he couldn't bear to see Chen Qi being bullied by someone like Li Ji. If you are still willing to study, I have a classmate who is the grade director of a martial arts high school. I can recommend you to go there. Class teacher Josh Whalen's concerned words brought a smile to Chen Chi's face, and he shook his head. No, Teacher Ja. Even if Li Ji hadn't happened, I would have dropped out of school. It's very difficult for a talent like me to take the Wuhan University entrance examination. So I stopped studying. And as you know about my family's situation, my younger brothers and sisters are still in school. This way I can reduce the burden on my family. Alas, Chen Chi's words were all true, but they sounded bitter to Josh Whalen's ears. This bunch of fools. Josh Whalen slapped his hand on the desk and cursed in a low voice. After scolding, he had no choice but to go through the withdrawal procedures for Chen Chi. The withdrawal application form has been filled out and needs to be submitted to the school's academic affairs office. After the review is completed, the procedure will be completed. He knew very well that even if he did not submit this application form, Chen Chi's withdrawal from school would be completed smoothly. Weakness and poverty are original sins, and breathing is wrong. Then what are you going to do? After completing the application for withdrawal from school, Josh Whalen ignored Chen Chi's persuasion and insisted on accompanying him to the school gate. Chen Chi turned his head, glanced at the second martial arts high school behind him again, turned to look at Josh Whalen, and pointed to the advertisement posted at the school gate with a smile, "Join the army." Looking in the direction of Chen Chi's finger, the advertisement with red background and white letters was extremely dazzling. Withdrawing his gaze and looking sideways at the handsome Chen Chi beside him, Josh Whalen's heart suddenly fluctuated. He stretched out his hand and shook hands with Chen Chi, with a serious look on his face. "Chen Chi, please forgive me. I've tried hard, but I still can't keep you. Go join the army, that's probably where you really should be." Feeling Josh Whalen's slightly strong and trembling hands, Chen Chi smiled brightly and said in a serious tone, "Teacher Ja, I will definitely come back. I'm leaving. Let's go." The sun poured down from the top of his head, and Chen Chi's face was looming in the light and shadow, looking hazy and mysterious. The shadow was elongated diagonally, passed through the majestic gate of the school, and lay quietly on the ground behind him, while he was walking forward resolutely. The figure seemed to be divided into two parts, half of which was still immersed in the second chapter. On the campus of Erwu High School, the other half has already stepped out of the school with their heads held high. Jincheng Draft Registration Office. There are a lot of people here. When Chen Kita arrived, there was already a long queue. These people are all here to recruit soldiers. The team moved forward slowly, and many of the faces in the team were young people like Chen Chi. Most of these people chose to join the army due to talent issues and had no hope of getting into Wuhan University. Although hunting groups make money quickly, they are very dangerous and have no guarantee of safety. On the one hand, joining the army provides stable resources. On the other hand, the army has countless strong men, martial arts skills, and resources. The most important thing is the glory. There are quite a few social terrorists in the team who are familiar with each other and can strike up a conversation with just a few words. "Brother, are you coming to join the army too?" A voice sounded, and Chen Chi looked up at the young man in front of him who was about the same age as himself. The young man was about 1.8 meters tall, with a full face and a particularly fierce look. He was greeting Chen Chi with a friendly smile. The young man in front of him was obviously not very good at finding topics to chat with, and one sentence made Chen Chi a little nervous. He smiled, raised his finger and pointed at the team in front, and asked with a smile, "What do you think they are here for?" The strong boy reacted and smiled awkwardly, Sorry. My name is Zhang Ruya, and what about you?" Zhang Ruya. Chen Chi was stunned for a moment, looked at Zhang Ruya's image, and twitched the corners of his mouth. "Good name." Chen Chi gave a thumbs up. Zhang Ruya, he couldn't connect this name with the person in front of him. Chen Chi. Chen Chi nodded and said with a smile, "What is your talent? Maybe we can be assigned together." Chen Chi's attitude made Zhang Ruya feel at ease, and she started chatting with Chen Chi. E-class archer. I have an A-level combat talent, strength enhancement. It seemed that it was a bit of a shock to Chen Chi. Zhang Ruya embarrassedly said her talent. After speaking, she looked at Chen Chi. Actually, the E-level talent is also very good. Quote. Chen Chi glanced at Zhang Ruya helplessly. Okay, don't explain, I'm not that fragile. Hee. Zhang Ruya chuckled. Zhang Ruya, your A-level talent is not weak anymore, why did you choose to join the army? In fact, A-level talent is not weak anymore, and only a dozen people have awakened A-level talent in Second Wu Jieli. The time in line was boring, and when someone chatted with him, Chen Qi just passed the time. Zhang Ruya hesitated for a moment. My father and grandfather said that I was too soft-tempered and asked me to go to the army to exercise. Chen Qi nodded. Although he had never been in contact with Zhang Ruya, he could already tell Zhang Ruya's temper through the brief conversation just now. It's indeed a little softer, but it doesn't seem to be too soft. With such an image and talent, no one would associate him with the word weak. On the contrary, it is Chen Qi's delicate appearance that is considered soft-tempered. The August sun was still scorching hot, and the team decreased unconsciously, and it was finally Chen Qi and Zhang Ruya's turn. Simply register Chen Qi's information on the draft registration, get a notice of enlistment, and leave. Chen Qi, Chen Qi. Zhang Ruya stood in front of the canteen not far away, holding 2 bottles of drinks in her hand. When she saw Chen Qi's registration completed, she waved to him. A drink for you. Thank you, Zhang Ruya. Although Zhang Ruya has a softer temper, she is still very nice. Chen Qining could tell that Zhang Ruya's family background was good, at least much better than his own. Chen Qi, I asked just now that our group of people in Jincheng may be assigned to the Third Army. I hope we can be assigned together. Zhang Ruya looked up at the team in front of her that was missing many people, and said. Maybe. Chen Qi, see you in 3 days. See you in 3 days. Comrade Chen Qi, you have registered to join the army. You have volunteered to join the team to resist the alien beasts and contribute to the protection of the people of China. This is a glorious and great cause. With this notice in hand, please come 3 days later at 7 o'clock in the morning. Meet at Jincheng Square before 1 p.m. Father Chen Zhijiang, mother, brother Chen Hao, and sister Chen Yao gathered around the enlistment notice on the table and read non-stop. Brother, I suddenly feel that joining the army is so glorious. Chen Hao looked up, his eyes flashing with excitement. Sister Chen Yao is still a little unhappy. She still couldn't bear Chen Qi leaving. Pa. Before Chen Qi could say anything, his mother slapped his younger brother Chen Hao on the head. What's the glory? It's to fight for your life. The younger brother Chen Hao opened his mouth, then deflated in grievance. Okay, Father Chen Zhijiang said to set the tone. Now that you have registered your enlistment information, let's make good preparations. When you join the military, safety is the most important thing. Mother opened her mouth, but she still had objections to Chen Qi's decision to join the army. But now that Chen Qi has taken back the enlistment notice, there is no turning back on this matter. Once Huasha nationalists pass the military registration, they will never be allowed to withdraw. In the evening, my mother showed off her skills and cooked a table of dishes, including a pound of meat from exotic animals that she had been reluctant to eat in the past. Looking at the table of dishes in front of them, Chen Yao and Chen Hao swallowed quietly. My father was sitting in the living room, glanced at the enlistment notice on the table again, and said, I'll go down there. Chen Qizhen, the 3 siblings and their mother looked at each other, wondering what their father was going to do. In front of the shop in the community downstairs, his father, Chen Zhijiang, took out his worn-out wallet and counted out a few coins. Here's a bottle of the most expensive wine. The store owner and his father have been acquaintances for decades. While taking the most expensive wine in the store from the shelf, he joked with a smile, Lao Chen, this is a lottery. You can't bear to drink this wine. Father Chen Zhijiang showed a smile and reached out to take the wine. That boy Chen Qi is going to join the army. That boy Chen Qi is going to join the army. The store owner was shocked, but then he realized it and took a bag of peanuts from the shelf behind him with a smile. Just think of it as my gift to that boy Chen Qi. Father Chen Zhijiang did not refuse, turned around and left with a smile and wine and peanuts. Join the army. Boy Chen Qi, you have to work hard. The store owner sighed as he looked at his father Chen Zhijiang's leaving figure. Dad, what are you? Chen Qi looked at the wine his father put on the table and felt very uncomfortable. The bottle of wine in front of me is enough to cover the family's living expenses for half a month. Father Chen Zhijiang waved his hand and opened the wine in his hand without hesitation. 2 glasses of wine, one for himself, and the other one were placed in front of Chen Qi. After picking up the wine, his father Chen Zhijiang said slowly, I am incompetent as a father. I have been doing nothing for decades. You were bullied in school and I have no ability to protect you. It caused you to drop out of school. This glass of wine apologizes for my not being a competent father. After finishing the drink, Dad, you're not. Chen Zhijiang waved his hand to interrupt Chen Qi's words and poured a second glass of wine. Joining the army is your own choice, and I have no objection. If you go to the army, be obedient. Stay back when something is dangerous, safety is the most important thing. His father, Chen Zhijiang, said earnestly that joining the army was a certainty. It was Chen Qi's own choice. He just blamed himself for his inability. There was no way I could stand in front of my son and protect him from the violent storm. Chen Qi nodded and picked up the wine glass. Dad, you have always been a hero in my heart. You are not incompetent, let alone incompetent. I'd like to offer this glass of wine to you. The mother's eyes were filled with tears and she wiped the tears from her eyes. Okay, let's eat quickly, the food is getting cold. Chen Yao, Chen Hao, you guys should eat too, eat more. During this meal, my usually taciturn father seemed like a talkative for the first time. Repeated over and over again, Chen Qi was told to pay attention to safety and not to show off. After dinner, his father, mother, Chen Yao, and Chen Hao packed Chen Qi's things. Chen Yao felt a little depressed. She looked back at her mother and father who were silently packing their things, then turned to Chen Qi and whispered, Brother, I have never seen Dad shed tears. Chen Qi raised his head and glanced at his parents who were packing their things. Thinking of what his father said at the table that night, he sighed in his heart, Dad is too strong. This time he will be wrong no less than me. Brother, you. Chen Yao wanted to keep Chen Qi, but the words that came out of her mouth changed. Brother, you must work hard in the army and make your father look good. I know. Chen Qi forced a smile and nodded. Chen Hao was silent on the sidelines. Chen Qi dropped out of school and joined the army, and he was also a little reluctant to give up. Time passed by quietly, and it was the next day in a blink of an eye. When Chen Qi opened his eyes, the house was already empty. After washing up, Chen Qi unfolded the light curtain panel in front of him. His eyes fell on the 3S talent, and a cold look flashed in his eyes, justice. It is not a gentleman not to avenge one's grudges. Now that he has obtained the 3S talent, Chen Qi will never let go of the opportunity to retaliate against Li Ji. Although he cannot offend the strength behind Li Ji now, he still has some ability to retaliate against Li Ji. As a society with abundant weapons, bows and arrows are naturally easy to obtain. You can buy it anywhere on the street. A long bow and 3 arrows cost a total of 2,340. This is all Chen Qi's savings since he was a child. Late at night, in the most prosperous area of Jincheng, lights flickered, and many men and women swayed, their eyes blurred. Li Ji hugged 2 women with curved fronts and backs, and the white snow made his mouth go dry. Brother Li, my chest feels so tight. Brother Li, my heart is beating so fast. If you don't believe me, just touch it. On the roof of a certain building, Chen Qi glanced at Li Ji, who was holding 2 women in his arms, and a sneer appeared on his lips. He won't take action right here, it's not the right time yet. Although Li Ji's family background is very good, his parents do not allow him to bring home any woman who is not recognized by them. If nothing else, he won't take these 2 women home. If you want to solve the problem without taking it home, there is only one place. When Chen Qi calmly watched Li Ji walking into the alley with 2 women in his arms, a cold look flashed in his eyes. The light in the alley was not very good, and Chen Qi could only see vague figures. Under such conditions, it would be difficult to shoot Li Ji. Don't miss the opportunity, don't miss it, draw your bow and draw an arrow. Whoosh whoosh, he shot out 3 arrows in one go, then turned around and left without looking back, without stopping at all. Now it's just interest. Li Ji, wait for me to come back, wait for me to come back and get the justice I want personally. 3 days passed quickly. It was already getting dark at 6 o'clock in Jincheng in August. As soon as 6 o'clock arrives, the family gets up early. Breakfast was already prepared. After swallowing 2 whole mouthfuls, Chen Qi boarded the car to Jincheng Plaza under the eyes of the family. Looking at his parents, Chen Yao, and Chen Hao standing there, Chen Qi's nose felt sore for no reason. His eyes were moistened unconsciously. "Young man, are you going to join the army?" An ant asked with a smile, looking at the luggage Chen Qi was carrying. Chen Qi nodded, his family members no longer visible in his sight. "Well done, young man, it's an honor to join the army." The ant held out her thumb, attracting the attention of many passengers around her. Chen Qi smiled and shook his head. If he had not been forced to drop out of school by Li Ji, he would not have joined the army. Jincheng Plaza was already crowded with people. People were coming and going, many of them were teenagers about the same age as Chen Qi. I dragged my luggage to Jincheng Square and looked up at the huge statue in Jincheng Square. He holds a long sword in his hand and has scars all over his body. This is the first strong man in the Huasha Kingdom, and he is also the strong man who has developed the talent of awakening. Fight Yuanzhou. With only S-level talent, he led a group of strong men to establish the Kingdom of China. Chen Qi. Zhang Rui's face was very eye-catching in the crowd. "You came quite early." Chen Qi greeted him with a smile. Zhang Rui chuckled, and just as the two were about to chat, a rough voice sounded in the noisy square. "Recruits gather." Turning around, he saw a giant man in military uniform, nearly 2 meters tall, striding towards him with fierce eyes. Although the few people following him were not as strong as the giant man, they still exuded a strong aura. "The relatives who are giving this away, please leave as soon as possible, within 3 minutes." The giant man raised his hand, and several people behind him began to ask the crowd to leave. The time is now 6:40. There are still 20 minutes left before the agreed meeting time. The crowd left quickly. Chen Qi and the other young men from the Jin army gathered together and stood in place. There are many thorns among those who join the army. And such people will definitely end badly. Once the 3 minutes passed, the crowd who had not yet gathered could only stand aside. 3 minutes, 800 push-ups per person, start now. The giant man's rough voice sounded again, his tiger eyes swept across, and few people dared to look at him. Facing the giant man and several soldiers who exuded a tough aura around him, the remaining people could only lie down on the ground and start. There was a 20-year-old boy with a strong build and a height of 1.9 meters. When he heard that he could do 800 push-ups in 3 minutes, he raised his eyebrows. "It's not the meeting time yet, I'm not late." These words fell into the ears of the giant man and the others, and they immediately attracted sharp glances. The giant man strode forward and stood in front of the young man. "Either you do it now, or I do it as you please." "I won't do it. I'm not late." The young man still felt that what he said was right. Bang! The giant man said nothing and pushed the young man to the ground, unable to move. "This is the first lesson I teach you. Just do whatever the instructor says." The irresistible force suddenly changed the boy's color. He is only one step away from being a warrior, and this kind of strength makes him feel that he can be different from others. But the giant man's behavior and the words coming out of his mouth made him wake up immediately. "This is the army, there is no reason at all," as the giant man said, "there is no reason in the army, just do what the superiors say. Even if it means you risk your life to die." After getting rid of the thorns, the giant man said expressionlessly to the people on the side, "Military uniforms are distributed. After you receive them, you will be given 1 minute to change. Put away your casual clothes." With the young man's lesson learned just now, no one asked any other questions and quickly changed into military uniforms. Chen Qi, who had changed into military uniform, looked at Zhang Rui who was not far away, smiled and nodded slightly. By the time everyone had finished changing their clothes, the time had reached 6:53, with 7 minutes left before 7 o'clock. "Roll roll." The giant man raised his hand and gave the order, and the roll call was quickly completed. Report: 5,343 people should have arrived, but actually 5,343 people arrived. Such a result made the giant man nodded slightly, stood on the steps, and swept his eyes across the crowd in front of him. "From the moment you put on this military uniform, your identity is no longer ordinary people, but soldiers. Soldiers should go to war and kill strange beasts." From the first generation of strong men to the present, alien beasts have been raging for hundreds of years. During these hundreds of years, generations of people have stood in front of you regardless of life and death, blocking the alien beasts for you. Now, since you have chosen to join the army, you will naturally take over this responsibility. This is a glorious and great cause, and our goal is to eliminate the alien beasts. Do you understand? Understood. The crowd responded in unison. Now, get on board. Jincheng Plaza is only 100 meters away from Jincheng Station. With the order, the crowd immediately started to move. A train specially used to transport troops has been waiting for a long time. As everyone boarded, the train started slowly. Zhang Ruya and Chen Qi were assigned to a carriage. Chen Qi, Zhang Ruya, who had a sinister face, walked up to Chen Qi and said hello with a smile. After looking at the brother next to Chen Qi, he saw that the man was very discerning, so he obediently moved away and found a seat to sit down. Chen Qi smiled and said nothing more. After all, Zhang Ruya never said anything about asking the brother to leave from the beginning to the end. This is not considered bullying. Chen Qi, I asked around, this time we are heading to the 3rd Army Corps. The giant man just now is from the 3rd Army. His name is Shang Han. He belongs to the 8th Division of the Beast Suppression Army under the 3rd Army. You know this. Chen Qi was really surprised this time. Chen Qi wouldn't be surprised if he heard Shang Han's name. He might know which front Shang Han belonged to and which division he was in. That would be a bit wrong. Such information would never be disclosed to ordinary people. How could he casually talk about the affairs of the combat unit? All go, brothers are awesome, you know this. The two of them did not deliberately avoid others while chatting. After listening to the two of them chatting, one person looked at Zhang Ruya with a face full of anger and surprise and said with a sigh. The two of them looked at each other and saw an extremely handsome young man looking at the two of them in surprise. Seeing the two of them, he smiled and nodded towards them, Su Xingyuan. Chen Qi, Zhang Ruya. Not surprisingly, when Su Xingyuan heard Zhang Ruya's name, he was stunned for a moment. After a while, he smiled and said, your name is awesome, Zhang Ruya. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought you were a cute girl. Zhang Ruya smiled sheepishly. Su Xingyuan just made a joke and did not mean to make fun of Zhang Ruya, so he brought the topic back to just now. Ruya, what you just said is true. Su Xingyuan called Ruya naturally. But when it fell into Chen Qi's ears, it gave him goosebumps for no reason. This one is so handsome, he can't be a gay, I guess. Zhang Ruya was also embarrassed to be called by Su Xingyuan and waved her hand, you should call me Lao Zhang. I really can't accept your name. Haha, okay, Lao Zhang, please tell me. Shang Han belongs to the 3rd Army, so it is very likely that we will be assigned to the 3rd Army. After speaking, Zhang Ruya looked around and saw that no one was paying attention. She lowered her voice and said, the 3rd Army ranks 2nd among the 3 major armies. The only one better than the 3rd Army is the 1st Army, which was the earliest. There are many strange beasts that need to be defended in the guarding position, and they are very strong. Being assigned to the 3rd Legion, even if we want to be lazy, we probably won't be able to do it. The 3rd Legion also suppressed a beast wave some time ago. It is said that the losses were considerable. Our group of people are here to make up for the losses. Chen Qi had almost no understanding of these things, but Su Xingyuan seemed to have some understanding. After hearing Zhang Ruya's words, the look on her face suddenly froze. I'm just an A-level talent. I shouldn't have to go to the front line, right? I prefer to do logistics. Chen Qi. He looked at Su Xingyuan resentfully, you are really pretending. Even Zhang Ruya was speechless. What kind of talent do you have? Protect me when the time comes. Su Xingyuan asked. The two looked at each other and Zhang Ruya said, A-level combat talent strength enhancement. Chen Qi. E-level talent, archer. Su Xingyuan twitched the corner of his mouth. He didn't expect that Chen Qi was actually an E-level talent. It's okay, Chen Qi, we will cover you. Chen Qi. Zhang Ruya. After an unknown amount of time, the train finally stopped shaking. Get off the car and gather. The car door opened, and rows of houses appeared neatly in the distance, and roars could be heard. In front of everyone, a soldier in military uniform stood neatly on the spot. The moment the car door opened, all eyes fell on everyone. Suddenly, everyone felt tense all over. Although the eyes of the group of people in front of them were calm, they looked at him and others as if they had no emotion. This is a warrior who emerged from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Even an ordinary look is enough to make an ordinary person's scalp tingle. This is the warrior. A completely different existence from ordinary people. The ones with the lowest strength here are all at the 4th level, and the most powerful one is Shang Han standing in front of this group of people. The strength is unknown. The recruits were broken up and assigned to various recruit companies. The team was quickly divided into classes. Chen Qi and Su Xingyuan were assigned to one class, and Zhang Ruya was assigned to another class. Roll call for each class. Shang Han said expressionlessly, and soon the roll call for each class was completed. After the roll call was completed, Shang Han glanced at everyone, and his rough voice sounded again. Take the platoon as a unit, register their respective strengths and talents, and form a combat team. Each combat team shall have no less than 2 amplification talents, healing talents and 4 combat talent members. Chen Qi turned his head to look at Zhang Ruya, nodded to him, and then started chatting quietly with Su Xingyuan. Xingyuan, my fighting talent is too weak. Do you want to consider forming a team with others? Su Xingyuan turned to look at Chen Qi and smiled faintly. The A-level genius said he wants to protect you, so he must protect you. Chen Qi. Soon, the combat team was formed. In addition to Su Xingyuan, an A-level talent, the remaining members of Chen Qi's team also had a B-level healing talent, and the rest were all C-level or D-level. Chen Qi, an E-level talent, cannot be too weak in front of these A-level, B-level, C-level, and D-level talents. Let me introduce, this is my buddy Chen Qi. He has an E-level talent, Archer. He can serve as a reconnaissance role for our team and mainly serves as a combat support. Su Xingyuan patted Chen Qi's shoulder affectionately and introduced him to everyone. Chen Qi smiled and nodded slightly to everyone, as a greeting. Everyone nodded in response. Team Su, why are we divided into combat teams now? Just follow the orders. Su Xingyuan replied with a straight face, fully grasping the temperament of the captain. What he awakened as the A-level combat talent, Thunder attribute, which is most suitable for offense. A well-deserved team leader. Gather on time at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning and bring them back each. After Shang Han finished speaking, he turned and left. The monitor in charge of Chen Qi's class is named Wu Lui. As soon as he returned to the dormitory, he walked into the dormitory. Several people stood up hurriedly and stood beside their respective beds. Pack your luggage and follow me to get your weapons later. Squad leader, can you get weapons now? Several people became excited. Combat talents also require weapons. Special existences with 3S talents like Chen Qi are definitely inseparable from weapons. I don't know what the longbows in the army are like. I haven't tried the 3S talent ability yet. In the logistics department, Chen Qi and others followed Wu Lui and started to register and receive weapons. Su Xingyuan chose a spear. According to him, only a spear was worthy of his handsome appearance. Most others choose knives. When it was Chen Qi's turn, he announced the word, longbow. The logistics staff in charge of registration glanced at Chen Qi in surprise and said with a smile, we have a lot of talent as an archer here. The other of Captain Zhang's 2 talents is archer. Come on. The weapons in the army are very comprehensive, including basically all kinds of weapons. Even thermal weapons. It's just that such thermal weapons are still useful against low-level alien beasts, but when faced with alien beasts that have reached the martial master level, the effect of thermal weapons is very small. The alien beasts in the martial arts realm are extremely fast and can basically dodge bullets. Even if they are alien beasts with amazing defenses, the bullets have completely lost their effect. Chen Qi looked at the rows of longbows in front of him, and randomly selected one and held it in his hand. It's all black and feels cold to the touch. The moment he held the long bow, Chen Qi felt comfortable all over. The long bow in his hand seemed to have been with him for several years. This is the role of 3S talent, Huyi, the ancestor of the longbow. There is no need to be familiar with any longbow in Chen Qi's hands. The logistics department is not only here to receive weapons, but also to receive benefits for new recruits, training pills, and a warrior-level alien beast crystal core. This is a means to quickly improve the strength of recruits. Here you go, Chen Qi. Back in the dormitory, Su Xingyuan threw the cultivation pill and alien beast crystal core to Chen Qi. You don't want it. Chen Qi was stunned. No, this thing is still useful for a talent like yours, but it's too little for me. Okay. Su Xingyuan pretended to be cool again. Chen Qi shook his head and did not refuse. Although he has 3S talent, his strength is the worst in the class. The strength of the others was almost reaching the warrior realm, but he was still far away from the warrior realm. Thank you, Chen Qi said with a smile, and Su Xingyuan waved his hand. After getting the training resources, everyone immediately devoted themselves to training. Su Xingyuan felt bored and went to visit other dormitories. Chen Qi held the 2 pills and 2 alien beast crystal cores in his hands, exhaled and swallowed a cultivation pill. Gulu. The elixir melted in his mouth, and before Chen Qi could taste it, it turned into energy and flowed through his body. Chen Qi only felt that his whole body was warm and extremely comfortable, but before he could finish feeling it, the warm feeling disappeared instantly. What followed was a clicking sound inside his body. Chen Qi opened his eyes fiercely, looking confused. Is this the end of digestion? As far as he knew, the medicinal power of a cultivation pill would take at least half an hour to digest before the warrior state. But I didn't even taste the taste just now, and now I have finished digesting and absorbing it. Is this the correct way to unlock 3S talents? Resources. You need resources to practice. Looking down at the remaining cultivation pill in his hand, he took a deep breath and swallowed it in one gulp. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes full of shock. The power of the 2 pills has been absorbed, and my strength is not far from the warrior realm at this time. This kind of cultivation speed is too fast. It was almost over before he even had time to feel it. 2 alien beast crystal cores were put into the mouth. A fishy smell exploded in his mouth, but Chen Qi didn't care. The 3S talent allowed him to absorb it much faster than normal people. With resources in hand, it is the best way to improve your strength as soon as possible. The absorption speed of the alien beast crystal core is slightly slower, a full 10 minutes. In the body, qi and blood surge, and the whole body feels comfortable. He slowly opened his eyes full of shock. It took him more than 10 minutes to go from an ordinary person to the first level of a warrior. The first level of warrior: 20 vitality and blood, strength, 1500, speed, 20 per second. Recruits need to be baptized before they can become real soldiers. Before that, Chen Qi and his group had to go through a month of recruit training. Its main purpose is to teach these new recruits the rules and to teach them the unique training methods in the army. War Armor Reiki Breathing Method. As the first strong man in the Huasha Kingdom, Zan Yuanzhou studied and understood and passed down the battle armor spiritual energy breathing method. The exercises can enhance physical fitness, qi and blood, improve strength, enhance defense, accelerate strength recovery, etc. This skill is also limited to practice in the military and is not allowed to be taught to outsiders. Veterans like Wu Lui are already familiar with the battle armor aura breathing method. Although it is not particularly advanced, it is enough to teach Chen Qi and his group of new recruits. The battle armor aura breathing method was passed down by Zan Yuanzhou, the first strong man in China. Everyone in the army can practice it. It's called the war spirit technique for short. Wu Lui stood astride, with a look of reverence on his face. When a group of recruits listened to Wu Lu's words, the huge statue with a sword in hand and scars all over his body suddenly appeared in their mind. As the first strong man in the Huasha Kingdom, Zan Yuanzhou is particularly sacred in the hearts of the Huasha Kingdom's warriors, and among them the most important among them is the military. Everyone was very excited when they heard that the war spirit technique was passed down by Zan Yuanzhou. Chen Qi is no exception. Seeing everyone's performance, Wu Lui showed a faint smile on his face. The tone was serious. Remember, the fighting spirit method is not allowed to be spread to outsiders, and anyone who violates it will be executed. After giving instructions, Wu Lui began to teach the combat spirit method. He put on a weird posture and said slowly, there are 10 levels of fighting spirit method. The first level of spiritual consciousness. Empty your mind, stay calm, and practice according to the rhythm mentioned before. Wu Lui said as he entered the state of practicing Duzhen spiritual technique. In an instant, his breathing suddenly became longer, and there was a faint shadow of armor on his body between the breaths. The third level of the war spirit method, the first appearance of the armor shadow. At this moment, Chen Qi and others couldn't help but enter the state of practicing the fighting spirit method. According to the unique posture and breathing rhythm of the war spirit technique, Chen Qi felt comfortable all over, and a very weak spiritual energy was introduced into his body. As this faint trace of spiritual energy was introduced into the body, every cell in Chen Qi's body was jumping and cheering. Like nectar after a long drought, the emergence of spiritual energy causes the cells in the body to begin to change continuously. Wu Lui opened his eyes and saw that Chen Qi and others had entered the state of practicing the war spirit technique, and nodded slightly. The main reason why the war spirit technique is limited to the military is because the war spirit technique is too powerful. Once you practice to a deep level, you can breathe like thunder and become fierce in fighting spirit. A strong man like Shang Han has reached the level where his breath becomes thunder. And this is the 6th level of the war spirit technique. When practicing the war spirit technique for the first time, you need to guide the spiritual energy into the body. Some people are fast and some are slow at this step. When he was a recruit, this step took a full day. I don't know what the speed of this group of people is like, whether it can be compared to my previous ones. While looking at Chen Qi and others, they walked around. This is good. I already feel it. I should be able to succeed today. Hey, this is not bad. It should be about the same today. When Wu Lui walked to Chen Qi's side, he paused slightly and let out a light sigh. He actually felt a trace of spiritual energy in Chen Qi's body. Has the spirit been successfully introduced into the body? Wu Lu's eyes were full of shock. At this time, it was only a few minutes before everyone started practicing the war spirit technique. Chen Qi succeeded in just a few minutes. What a fast absorption speed. Standing next to Chen Qi, Wu Lui could feel that the spiritual energy in the air was being absorbed by Chen Qi. Chen Qi in front of him was like a whale devouring the spiritual energy in the air. This also causes the speed at which people around you bring spirits into your body to slow down greatly. The speed that originally took 1 hour to succeed may be delayed to 2 hours or even 3 hours. He pondered for a moment, then reached out and patted Chen Qi to wake him up. With doubts in his eyes, Chen Qi opened his eyes. Wu Lui did not speak, but pointed to a location not far away and motioned Chen Qi to go there. What's your name? Chen Qi. Wu Lui looked at Chen Qi, who looked delicate and resolute in his eyes, and raised his eyebrows slightly. I remember that the awakening talent you registered as the E-level combat talent, archer, right? Wu Lui accurately stated Chen Qi's information. The squad leader needs to be familiar with each person's information and talents so that he can conduct targeted training during this period of training. Chen Qi nodded. Chen Qi's answer made Wu Lui more and more curious. But after thinking about it for a while, I finally didn't continue to ask. There have been cases where people had average awakening talents, but absorbed spiritual energy very quickly. There are many examples of this. He only thought that Chen Qi was such a person. You wait until they finish practicing. In order to prevent Chen Qi from disturbing other people's cultivation, Wu Lui simply let Chen Qi rest. 2 hours later, Su Xingyuan opened his eyes. After successfully attracting the spirit into his body, he felt comfortable all over. With an A-level talent, he can draw spirits into his body much faster than others. Looking up, Wu Lui and Chen Qi were looking at him. Stay aside for now. Wu Lui nodded slightly to him. He knew Su Xingyuan's information, A-level combat talent, and his thunder attribute. Once such a person joins the company, he will definitely rise quickly, and there is no need for him to have a tense relationship with Su Xingyuan. Chen Qi, why don't you practice? Su Xingyuan was curious about why Chen Qi didn't practice. Then he thought that Chen Qi had awakened an E-level talent. He patted Chen Qi's shoulder helplessly and said comfortingly, "It's okay. Although introducing the spirit into the body has not been successful, as long as you persist, you will definitely succeed." These words caused Wu Lui to look at him strangely. Chen Qi smiled and nodded without explaining. Although Su Xingyuan likes to show off, he is still a good person. Okay, everyone is already familiar with the war spirit technique. Now we need to practice more in the future. After Wu Lui finished speaking, he announced that he would be brought back. I'll give you 1 day to think clearly about the martial arts you need to practice, and then I'll help you choose the martial arts. Before I do this, I would like to remind you that it is best to choose martial arts to make up for your own weaknesses. After finishing speaking, he glanced at Chen Qi. It's like an archer. He has long-range attack methods. What he needs to make up for his close combat skills. Chen Qi, let's go find Lao Zhang. As soon as Wu Lui left, Su Xingyuan jumped off the bed and took Chen-Chi to find Zhang Ruya. Although they are not divided into classes together, they all live in the same dormitory building. Zhang Ruya lives on the 5th floor, while Chen-Chi and the others live on the 2nd floor. Chen-Chi was helpless. Su Xingyuan was going to find Zhang Ruya to show off. Not surprisingly, Zhang Ruya gave Su Xingyuan enough psychological satisfaction. Xingyuan, are you too fast? You succeeded in attracting spirits in 2 hours. Zhang Ruya's temperament would not react in any other way. Su Xingyuan waved his hands and pretended not to care. Oh, it's actually not bad. 2 hours is not fast, S-level talent is fast, although I haven't seen it. Zhang Ruya agreed. Although he has an A-level talent, it took him nearly 6 hours to succeed. As for the S-level talent he mentioned, they haven't seen it yet. There are SS and SSS above S-level. When Su Xingyuan said this, his eyes were filled with envy. Those people are the proud ones of heaven. If I knew a genius with SSS, no, S talent. How are you? Chen-Chi asked curiously with a smile. Bu Piao has been living for half his life and has never met his master. I would like to be my adoptive father. Su Xingyuan said with a smile and a joking tone. Chen-Chi and Zhang Ruya were both amused by Su Xingyuan's shameless words. Let's go to the cafeteria. The three of them went to the cafeteria together. On the way, Zhang Ruya asked Chen-Chi curiously, Chen-Chi, have you introduced spirits into your body today? Before Chen-Chi could speak, Su Xingyuan slapped Zhang Ruya on the shoulder. Old Zhang, I think we should consider what to eat in the cafeteria later. Zhang Ruya reacted and smiled apologetically at Chen-Chi. Chen-Chi shrugged and said it didn't matter. Although he has 3S talent, in the army, a strong man is respected. As long as you are strong enough, people in the army will respect and admire you. In the end, he only has a 3S talent, and his strength is only at the first level of a warrior. Exposing his 3S talent now will shock everyone, but it won't bring anything more. Only grown-up geniuses deserve attention. Forging iron requires oneself to be strong. Have you all decided what martial arts you will choose tomorrow? Su Xingyuan picked up a piece of exotic animal meat, swallowed it in one gulp, and looked at Chen-Chi and Zhang Ruya. Zhang Ruya nodded. I've thought about it, my talent is strength enhancement, and I'm going to consider the hammer's martial arts. For strength enhancement, you use a sledgehammer, which matches well. Su Xingyuan nodded. What about you? Zhang Ruya has a big appetite, and the food on the plate in front of her is much more than that of Chen-Chi and the other two. Marksmanship must be marksmanship, Su Xingyuan said with great pride, hunting fierce beasts at the critical moment, killing powerful enemies in the world of mortals. Kill him 7 in and 7 out. Chen-Chi and the two also had an understanding of Su Xingyuan's character. I love showing off so much. But his pretense doesn't seem to offend anyone. The two of them echoed, please Xingyuan take me. It's a trivial matter. Su Xingyuan waved his hand and said with a smile. Then the two of them looked at Chen-Chi. Zhang Ruya hesitated and asked, Chen-Chi, what are you going to choose? Chen-Chi had already made up his mind. Seeing the two of them, he smiled and replied, my talent is as an archer, I lack close combat capabilities, but I am not very interested in sword skills. So I still considered choosing marksmanship. Have vision. Su Xingyuan raised his head and said vaguely, you have a gun, I have a gun, plus Lao Zhang's sledgehammer. The best thing you can talk about is guns. Chen-Chi smiled slyly and made a joke. Su Xingyuan and Zhang Ruya understood instantly. The three of them looked at each other and laughed. Everything is left unsaid. When Chen-Chi and the other two were discussing what martial arts to choose in the cafeteria. In the recruit company's office, the squad leaders of Wului and other recruit companies gathered together, and the one sitting at the top was Shang Han, who was the strongest and had the highest military rank. Seeing everyone gathered, Shang Han spoke first. Starting from Class 1, let's talk about the situation of each batch of new recruits. A young man in his mid-20s stood up first. He had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked like a handsome young man. Only the huge scar on his face from his eyebrows to his throat ruined his handsomeness, but it added some sharp temperament out of thin air. There is one person in the group with A-level amplification talent and 9 people who are beginners in the combat spirit method. No special personnel have been found yet. The second class has 2 people with B-level combat talents, 1 with B-level healing talents, and 7 people who are beginners in the combat spirit method. No special personnel have been found yet. Shang Han listened to everyone's reports expressionlessly. The 3rd Legion had just suppressed a wave of beasts some time ago, resulting in heavy losses in personnel. The main purpose of this meeting is to understand whether there are any special talents among these recruits. In the 3rd Legion, C-level and D-level talents are the most numerous, followed by B-level talents, and A-level talents are enough to attract people's attention. As for S-level talents, such personnel will basically not appear in recruits, but just in case, Shang Han still needs to screen again. Prevent talents from being missed. As people continued to report, Shang Han couldn't help but frown slightly. The quality of this batch of recruits can't be said to be very good, but it's not too bad either, with medium quality. This made him gradually lose interest in the following reports, but he still kept his spirits up and listened to everyone's reports. Soon, Wu Lui stood up. Class 32 has 1 person with A-level combat talent, 1 with B-level healing talent, 9 people who are beginners in the combat spirit method, and 1 suspected special person. Shang Han sat up slightly, his eyes changed slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "Tell me about the situation." E-level combat talent, Archer, the speed of practicing war spirit magic is abnormal, comparable to S-level talent. As soon as these words came out, the faces of everyone present suddenly changed slightly. Someone said, "Squad Leader Wu, I'm not questioning you, I'm just curious. It stands to reason that such a training speed will never appear in a person with E-level combat talent." Someone nodded in agreement. Has he practiced before? Someone speculated. Impossible. Wu Lui shook his head and looked at the person who spoke. When he was teaching the battle spirit technique, his movements were stiff and his strength was low. If he had practiced the battle spirit technique in advance, his strength would definitely not be like this. In addition, the war spirit technique does not allow external transmission. Everyone knows this. Listening to Wu Lui's words, everyone nodded slightly. Wu Lui was right, but that's not right. If it's true what Wu Lui said, then this person's talent definitely cannot be an E-level combat talent. Is it possible that this kid Wu Lui really found the treasure? Shang Han listened quietly to everyone's argument and pondered for a moment. Give me his information. During the meeting, Wu Lui and his group had already prepared personnel information in advance. This includes everyone's family background, from elementary school to the beginning of martial arts, and everything in martial arts is detailed. I have read his information. He has a clean background. He has average talent since childhood. There is no doubt about it. Shang Han looked through Chen Qi's information while listening to Wu Lui's report. After flipping through Chen Qi's information, Shang Han closed the information in his hand. A deep voice said, "Pay attention to this person. The E-level combat talent, Archer, does not match his speed in practicing the war spirit technique." After thinking about it, he added, "Incorporate it into the focus list of the talent plan." Yes, Chen Qi and the others were completely unaware of the scene in the office. At this moment, he is practicing the battle spirit method in the dormitory. After saying goodbye to Zhang Ruya, Chen Qi and Su Xingyuan returned to the dormitory. Before the lights were turned off, everyone was racing against time to practice the war spirit method. Everyone who has practiced the war spirit technique can clearly feel the changes in their bodies. Just getting started, the physical quality has changed greatly. In addition, they could clearly see the phantom of the armor behind Wu Lui while he was practicing, which made them dare not relax even more. Seize every opportunity to practice continuously. Even Su Xingyuan didn't relax at this moment, focusing on practicing the war spirit method. After coming out of the logistics office, Chen Qi and others had a martial arts book in their hands. Chen Qi chose the martial arts of marksmanship as he had thought before. Carrying a long bow and carrying a spear. It can attack from a distance, but it is also not afraid of close combat. The next days were spent constantly practicing fighting spirit techniques and practicing martial arts. Everyone's strength is constantly getting stronger. Everyone in Chen Qi's tactical team has reached the first level of warrior. Su Xingyuan has an A-level combat talent, and his training speed is much faster than others. Now he has reached the second level of warrior. Qi and blood 40. The force of a punch is 1500 minus 2000 kilograms. The burst speed can reach 25 meters per second. Chen Qi's strength also unknowingly increased to the third level of warrior. Qi and blood 60. The power of his punch reaches 2,000-2,500 kilograms. The speed has also reached 30 per second. At this time, there are still 3 days left before the end of 1 month of recruit training. Gather. During this time, everyone had a better understanding of Wu Lui in front of them. One of the top 10 beings in the 32 companies, with strength, 4th level martial artist. The 3rd level of war spirit method, the first appearance of armor shadow. With such strength, this recruit squad leader is also a well-deserved strong one. He once led people to kill 2 strange beasts in the 2nd level of military generals. Wu Lui's eyes were calm. The 1-month recruit time is about to end. You have all grown up a lot in this month, and all of you are at the 1st level of martial arts. Su Xingyuan and Chen Qi looked at each other with smiles on their faces. This month passed very quickly, their respective strengths continued to improve, and their mutual comradeship continued to build and deepen. But strength alone without actual combat is not enough, so in the next 3 days, we will have a competition. This is a test of the results of your first month of recruit training. Chen Qi's eyes changed slightly and his breathing became heavier. This is about actual combat. About to face the alien beast for real, Chen Qi felt a little excited all over, and the blood speed in his body accelerated a lot. Su Xingyuan smiled, looking forward to Wu Lui's actual battle. So does everyone else. Now, take the tactical team as a unit and gather together. Wu Lui raised his hand and glanced at the tactical communication watch on his wrist, and raised a finger. In 1 minute, head towards a specific location. The specific location has been sent to your tactical watches. Chen Qi and others lowered their heads and glanced at the specific location received on their watches. Actual combat is not a drill, and there is a high chance of injury or even death. This is your first battle. Only through the baptism of blood can you truly become a warrior. Now, let's go. Are you afraid? Chen Qi. Su Xingyuan held a spear in his hand and walked beside Chen Qi. He raised his head and glanced around. It's okay. Chen Qi shrugged. It can be said that he has been looking forward to this battle for a long time. His 3S talent has never been used in actual combat, which also led him to feel that the 3S talent was just like this. At most, the speed of cultivation is just a little faster. Haha. Su Xingyuan swiped the spear, bringing up a large amount of dust, and laughed and said, "From this battle on, I, Su Xingyuan, will shock everyone's attention." Chen Qi shook his head helplessly. Su Xingyuan is talented, handsome and has no airs. I met a lot of people during recruit training. What he said just now did not avoid others. Some people ridiculed him. Su Xingyuan, stop bragging. That's right, Su Xingyuan, unless you take me with you. Facing everyone's ridicule, Su Xingyuan smiled brightly and uttered 2 words with a smile, "Get out." Haha, everyone left with a smile. There are several A-level talents among the recruits, and besides Su Xingyuan, there are 6 more. Among these 6 people, one has A-level healing talents and A-level amplification talents, and the others all have A-level combat talents. Although he is an A-level talented thunder player, he is still under a lot of pressure when facing these teams. After all, they have Chen Qi, an E-level talent, in their team. Chen Qi, you are playing the role of reconnaissance, and you will be used as a combat assistant during the battle. Be careful. Su Xingyuan looked at the members of the tactical team, and then told Chen Qi. As the captain of the team, he must arrange the responsibilities of the team members before the war. Others have no problem with this. Although Chen Qi's talent is only E-level, beings like Archer can still provide them with a lot of help from the side. Arrive at the location where the watch was received. An abandoned county town appeared in everyone's sight. There are many soldiers guarding here around. Seeing Chen Qi and others arriving, a soldier with the rank of 3rd level sergeant on his shoulders glanced at the crowd and said, "The assessment lasts for 2 days. During these 2 days, the number of alien beasts killed by each tactical team will be determined. Count the points. Different beasts have different points with different strengths. 1 point for the 1st level, 2 points for the 2nd level, and so on. After killing, the watch in your hand will automatically recognize and calculate the points. You cannot attack anyone except alien beasts, otherwise you will be killed on the spot. Do you understand? Understood. Chen Qi and others nodded. They knew this without saying anything. It is absolutely unforgivable to attack fellow soldiers in the army. Being killed on the spot also proved that this actual combat assessment was monitored by strong people. Go in. The third-level sergeant nodded and waved his hand to signal the soldiers guarding not far away to let Chen Qi and others in. How many people do you think can pass this recruit assessment? Somewhere at the assessment point, Shang Han raised his eyes and glanced around, followed by Wu Lui and other recruit squad leaders. It's hard to say. I haven't experienced actual combat and it's not like I haven't encountered a team of alien beasts collapsing before. Some people shook their heads, and they were not sure about the passing rate of the recruit assessment. Wu Lui thought for a while. It may be 70%. Shang Han glanced sideways at Wu Lui and smiled. Wu Lui, do you think the team you lead can pass? Yes, Wu Lui replied without hesitation. A month has passed and he has learned enough about the people under his command. Not to mention Su Xingyuan's A-level talent Thunder, there is also a person with B-level combat talent in the team, and the rest are all C-level and D-level. This configuration is not considered strong among the entire recruit team, but it is definitely not weak. What made him so confident was that he always felt that something was wrong with Chen Qi. Battle Spirit Master Chen Qi is about to enter the second level of spirit condensation. He guessed that Chen Qi most likely had an extraordinary affinity for spiritual energy. This is also the reason why he reported Chen Qi to Shang Han as a special personnel. Karamatsu County. Stepping into the abandoned county town, Chen Qi squatted down and brushed away the dust on a stone tablet, revealing the words carved underneath. Tangsong County is a small county, covering an area of 873 square kilometers. In addition to the A-level talent Su Xingyuan, the team also includes a B-level healing talent. Quote, there is one C-level healing talent, 2 people with amplification talent, and the rest are all combat talent. 2 healers, 2 amplification talents, and 4 combat talents are the standard configuration of a combat team. This is also the pattern that has been formed when they first joined the recruit company. The person who just spoke was Wang Er, the only one with a healing talent in the team. With B-level healing talent, he plays a very important role for the entire team. Su Xingyuan nodded slightly. The streets of the abandoned county town were full of abandoned cars, houses covered by vegetation, and cracked roads. The highest level of exotic beasts in Tangsong County is the 6th level of Warrior Realm, and the number is unknown. At this moment, Su Xingyuan no longer looked as indifferent as before, and looked extremely serious. This is the first time that everyone present has faced a strange beast. A slight mistake may cause casualties. As the team leader, he must be responsible for the safety of the team members. After thinking for a while, he looked at Chen Qi. Chen Qi, you are responsible for finding the commanding heights, searching for the alien beasts, monitoring the alien beasts and assisting in combat. The healing talent focuses on combat talent except me. The amplification talent must provide the combat amplification effect as soon as possible when encountering a strange beast. Everyone nodded seriously. After saying these words, Su Xingyuan nodded towards Chen Qi. Be careful, we are waiting for your news. Chen Qi nodded and quickly disappeared from the spot. After a while, Chen Qi's figure appeared on the roof of the building. At this moment, the sun was setting and the light gradually became dim, which made it difficult for Chen Qi to find the strange beast. Chen Qi seemed to have no influence at all. His eyes changed slightly, and the originally dark eyes turned amber at this moment. A line of text was displayed on the light screen in front of him. Eagle Eye Insight Talent Skill. Consume mental power to gain eagle-like vision. Current discernible distance. 1 kilometer. The discernible distance is based on one's own strength. This is the second innate skill he awakened after breaking through to the 3rd level of Warrior Realm. The jet black alloy longbow was held in Chen Qi's hand, and the breeze blew, lifting the broken hair on Chen Qi's forehead. At this time, he was like a hunter lurking on the roof, constantly looking for his prey. Southeast. Zhongrua Supermarket, a giant rock-armored beast, 873 meters away. Chen Qi's voice was transmitted to the waiting Su Xingyuan and others through the tactical watch in his hand. How far? Su Xingyuan was surprised and asked again. 873 meters. Chen Qi's voice came, accurately reporting the distance of the alien beast again. Gulu. Except for Su Xingyuan, the rest of the team members' eyes widened with disbelief. 873 meters, I'll tell you whether it's real or fake. Wang Er, how far can you see? More than 200 meters. Wang Er hesitated and replied. Everyone was speechless. 873 meters, this distance is a bit ridiculous. Su Xingyuan came to his senses and decided to believe Chen Qi. He raised his head and glanced at the team members in front of him. Believe him. Ready to go. At this moment, everyone's temperament suddenly changed. Let's go. After saying that, everyone quickly disappeared from the spot. Chen Qi, always pay attention to the movements of the strange beasts around you. Understood. On the roof of the building, Chen Qi squatted aside, with a silver arrow already attached to the bowstring of the alloy longbow in his hand. On the ground beside him, there were nearly 30 silver arrows. Zhongrua Supermarket, a giant rock-armored beast that looks like a combination of a rhinoceros and a crocodile. It is 8 meters long. Its whole body is covered with a thick layer of rock carapace. Its limbs are thick and powerful. Behind it, a long-tailed beast, there is a huge hammer-like structure at the end. When Su Xingyuan and others were approaching the rock-armored beast, Chen Qi on the roof was also approaching the rock-armored beast. The distance just now was not enough to attack the rock-armored beast, and the obstruction of the building would cause his attack to have a blind spot. His target was a tall building more than 400 meters away. It can provide you with a good field of vision, and at the same time ensure that there are no blind spots in the field of vision, at least for the battlefield. Combat amplification. Su Xingyuan glanced at the rock-armored beast not far away and gave the order indifferently. In the team, Xuanyan's aura suddenly changed, and he slapped the other two combatants with both hands at the same time. His amplifying talent is strength. The other increasing talent is AC level talent, which increases speed. Soon everyone had enjoyed the amplification talent. Su Xingyuan licked his lips. Do it. Before he finished speaking, a silver arrow tore through the night, and the sound of piercing the air suddenly sounded, heading straight for the giant rock-armored beast. Before taking action, he needed to attract the attention of the alien beast so that Su Xingyuan and others could approach the giant rock-armored beast. Roar! The sudden appearance of the arrow immediately attracted the attention of the rock-armored beast, and a pair of cold eyes immediately locked onto Chen Qi's position. With a roar, he stamped his strong limbs on the ground, causing the earth to shake. His 8-meter-long body did not feel bloated at all, but was extremely flexible. Where are you looking? Sand coins. Just when the rock-armored beast was about to make a move, a figure holding an alloy spear flew out and suddenly attacked from the side of the rock-armored beast. Su Xingyuan is the fastest, and the others are not slow either. Although healing talents are used as combat auxiliary roles, it does not mean that they have no combat capabilities. 1A level, 1B level, and the remaining several C level and D level attacks immediately made the rock-armored beast furious. The moment Su Xingyuan and others appeared, a huge long tail swept violently, and there was a dull sound of breaking through the air. Rock-armored behemoths are characterized by defense and strength. The huge hammer-shaped structure at its tail can explode with huge power. Get out of the way! Su Xingyuan shouted. His whole body jumped up, the tip of his spear flashed with a trace of lightning, and it fiercely bombarded the head of the rock-armored beast. Everyone dodged immediately, but the giant rock-armored beast was extremely fast. One person was a little slower and was brushed by the tail of the giant rock-armored beast. It was just a brush, and his whole body seemed to be hit by a huge force. He flew backwards and hit the ground with a thud. Blood suddenly overflowed from his mouth. At this moment, Su Xingyuan's spear tip had hit the head of the rock-armored beast. Dang! Sparks flew everywhere, and the tip of the spear only penetrated the top of the rock-armored beast's head, causing no substantial damage. Grass! Su Xingyuan's face changed slightly, and the spear tip with thunder did not break through the defense of the rock-armored beast, leaving only a small wound. A trace of blood stained the tip of the gun. He didn't dare to delay, so he drew out his spear and swept towards the right side. Bang! A dull sound sounded, and the power contained in the tail of the rock-armored beast was instantly transmitted to Su Xingyuan's arm through the spear. His expression changed, and his figure flew back involuntarily. The expressions of the other people suddenly changed. Captain, be careful. There was a sound of breaking through the air, and the hammer-shaped structure at the tail of the rock-armored beast was hitting him again at an extremely fast speed. Su Xingyuan's heart was beating wildly. He was unable to use any force while he was in the air. The contact just now made his whole arm numb. At this time, he had reached a critical moment of life and death. Holy shit, I'll die before I leave. This sentence suddenly popped up in my mind. Just when everyone thought Su Xingyuan would be seriously injured by the rock-armored beast. A silver arrow suddenly tore through the night, making a sharp sound, and hit the hammer-shaped structure of the long tail of the rock-armored beast with incomparable accuracy. The sudden arrow suddenly caused the tail of the rock-armored beast to shift to the side, grazing Su Xingyuan's body. Wukao, Chen Qi. This arrow caused everyone's eyes to change suddenly, and they couldn't help but turn their heads to look in the direction where the arrow appeared. Su Xingyuan shouted excitedly, "You!" Chapter 11. E-Level Combat Talent, Archer. Almost everyone has forgotten the existence of Chen Qi. Archers exist as combat auxiliary characters, and no one, including Su Xingyuan, has any illusions about Chen Qi. But it was such a character that all of them had almost forgotten, but he shot an arrow like a stroke of genius at the most critical moment. This arrow pulled Su Xingyuan, who should have been seriously injured, back from the edge of the cliff. Everyone was excited and reacted immediately when they heard Su Xingyuan's excited shouting. Attack towards the rock-armored giant beast. This is everyone's first battle, and it is also the first battle where Chen Qi shows his abilities. He used practical actions to tell everyone present that archers are not just a combat auxiliary role. He can also be very strong. Silver arrows kept appearing. Every appearance will block the attack of the rock-armored behemoth, allowing team members to deal with peace of mind. Chen Qi on the roof seemed to control the entire battlefield. The bowstring of the alloy longbow will always be loosened at the most opportune moment. Roar. After the rock-armored giant beast roared unwillingly, its huge body finally fell to the ground. The flashing thunder all over Su Xingyuan slowly dissipated, and Wang Er and the others gasped for air. Looking at the giant rock-armored beast that fell to the ground in front of them, everyone's eyes were full of excitement. Clean the battlefield. With a flick of the spear, Su Xingyuan gave the order, turned to look at the distant roof, with thunder in his eyes, and gave a thumbs up in its direction. The strength of the rock-armored giant beast is actually not too strong, it is only at the third level of a warrior. The reason why everyone is having such a difficult time is mainly because this is their first time facing a strange beast, and their cooperation with each other is not enough. If it weren't for the A-level talent Su Xingyuan in the team and the cooperation of others, they would definitely be attrition in battle. The most important thing is the appearance of Chen Qi. Awesome, Chen Qi, I am Sao. After Wang Er and others cleaned the battlefield, they took back all the arrows and handed them to Chen Qi. That's awesome, Chen Qi, is this the archer? If it hadn't been for Chen Qi's action just now, at least 2 of us would have been injured. Everyone was talking about it. Chen Qi smiled and didn't explain too much. Su Xingyuan looked at Chen Qi with surprise in his eyes. He asked curiously, Chen Qi, are you really an E-level talent? Hearing Su Xingyuan's words, other people in the team couldn't help but look at Chen Qi curiously. Chen Qi's ability is a little outrageous. As far as they know, archers have always appeared as combat auxiliaries in battles, and their attack capabilities are not very powerful. They can only harass at best. It would be okay if Chen Qi awakened a B-level archer, but Chen Qi only has an E-level archer talent. It was indeed an E-level talent when it awakened. Chen Qi did not say his 3S talent, but played a word game. It was E-level when he awakened, and I didn't say it is still the same now, he added secretly in his mind. Outrageous. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at Chen Qi with even weirder eyes. An E-level archer talent can directly affect the outcome of the battle just now. Okay, 3 points have been obtained. Su Xingyuan shook his head and did not ask any more questions. Chen Qi's appearance gave him enough confidence in this recruit competition assessment. There are a few things you need to pay attention to in the previous battle. Su Xingyuan and others did not rush to take action again, but began to choose to overturn the situation. Only by identifying the shortcomings of the previous battle could they correct them in future battles. This is for future consideration. While Su Xingyuan and Chen Qi were reviewing their results, other teams participating in the recruit competition assessment also experienced their first battle. Some people get hurt, some people quit. Taken together, not all teams can resolve the battle as quickly as Chen Qi and his team. Somewhere, Shang Han, Wu Lui and other recruit company squad leaders gathered together. I have received the performance data of each team in the first battle. Wu Lui opened the information in his hand. Wolong team, overall evaluation, A+. Captain Su Xingyuan's command performance, A, combat performance, A+. The rest of the team members performed A. Special performance personnel, Chen Qi, strength, first level warrior, overall performance A++. Quote. Wu Lui's eyes widened at the first glance when he opened the information in his hand. As the awakener of the A-level combat talent Thunder, Su Xingyuan's performance was no surprise to Wu Lui. The performance of others was also within his expectations. What surprised him was that Chen Qi, who had awakened as an E-level talented archer, surpassed Su Xingyuan and others in the evaluation, reaching an A++ level. If he hadn't known that this competition assessment was led by Shang Han, he would have been suspicious of the information in his hand. Are you kidding? Chen Qi is just an E-level combat talent. Compared with the information in the hands of Wu Lui and others, the information in Shang Han's hands filters out teams with poor evaluations. Only teams rated A and above were screened out. There are 15 such teams. Shang Han looked through the information in his hand. The conference room was silent except for the sound of turning paper. Wu Lui looked at the information in his hand. He was very curious as to how Chen Qi's evaluation in this information came to be A++, which was 1+ higher than the Captain Su Xingyuan who had awakened the A-level talent type. Finally, when Shang Han looked through the information about Wolong team, he raised his eyebrows and looked up for the first time at Wu Lui, who looked troubled. A calm voice sounded. Wu Lui, do you think there is any problem? Hearing this, the eyes of everyone present fell on Wu Lui. Shang Han's sudden opening made them all sit up straighter. Wu Lui smiled bitterly and looked up at Shang Han. Company commander, I don't know either. As a result, everyone present became more and more curious. What's going on? A monitor sitting next to Wu Lui moved his body slightly and glanced at the information in front of Wu Lui. When he saw the score of Wolong team on the information, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. A+. Looking down the information, my eyes finally stopped at the bottom line of bold text. Special performance personnel, Chen Qi, strength, first level warrior, overall performance A++. Gone. This line of text shocked him deeply. Although he didn't know what Chen Qixing's talent was, just the words A++ in overall performance were enough to make him swallow his saliva. This is the first actual combat. These are all new recruits. A new recruit can get such a high evaluation in his first actual combat. How could he not be shocked? If I remember correctly, even Shang Han, who was the strongest among the people present and had now reached the rank of lieutenant, his evaluation when he was a new recruit was only A+. It only took 5 years for Shang Han to go from a recruit to the current company commander. A rare smile appeared on Shang Han's face, and his eyes swept over everyone present. Go and call the rating person in charge of the recruit competition assessment. After saying that, he lowered his head again and looked at the team evaluation information in his hand. Chen Qi and others didn't know what was going on in the office. At this moment, they had just finished a battle. Flame Lion. The red hair is like flame, and it can control part of the fire element to fight. Su Xingyuan's whole body was flashing with thunder, and the spear in his hand was winding with thunder. At a glance, it looked like a thunder dragon was being held in his palm. Wang Er was squatting next to a person, and a touch of cyan flashed across his body and gradually disappeared. What a risk! Xuan Yan, a member of the team with C-level combat talent, looked at Ren Jianming who was receiving treatment with lingering fear. When Master Yan was about to die just now, he actually pretended to be in a coma, causing Xuan Yan and him who came to check on him to almost die. If it weren't for the timely action of Su Xingyuan and Chen Qi, Ren Jianming would not be in the same state now, or at least he would be seriously injured. In that case, he would have no choice but to withdraw from this recruit competition assessment. Ren Jianming said helplessly. what do you mean? If Captain Su and Chen Qi hadn't taken action just now, both of us would have been injured. Hearing this, everyone present couldn't help but nodded. Wang Er shook his head with a smile and took back his palm. Ren Jianming's injury was not serious. He said with a smile, I hope you are lucky enough to have no broken hands or feet, otherwise you can prepare to retire and go home. Ren Jianming smiled and handed over to Wang Er. Thank you, Master Wang, for saving my leg. The power of thunder dissipated on its own, and Su Xingyuan said angrily, please remember a little longer. The alien beasts are not fools. They also have basic intelligence. The alien beasts we encounter now are only warrior-level alien beasts. Once you reach the martial artist level, the intelligence of the alien beasts will be greatly improved. Some cunning alien beasts can even cooperate with each other, just like humans. Everyone nodded. So far, they have killed 5 alien beasts. With such a record, they don't know how they rank among all the teams. But they can fully feel that after these few battles, their fighting skills are constantly improving. Okay, dig out the alien beast's crystal core, it's time for us to leave. Su Xingyuan waved his hand. Now, he is becoming more and more skilled in the role of captain. There is an undeniable flavor in everything he does. Everyone nodded, packed up all their things, and disappeared quickly. Somewhere more than 200 meters away, Chen Qizheng was standing on a high ground. His eagle-eye insight ability allowed him to see further than others, and he could also capture unusual movements a few minutes faster than others. It was precisely because of his ability that they were able to quickly kill 5 strange beasts in a short period of time. After looking around, he turned his attention to Su Xingyuan and the others. I saw Su Xingyuan making a few gestures in the direction of Chen Qi. Chen Qi nodded slightly, packed up his things, and left quickly. This is a common tactical gesture in the military, and its meaning is simple, looking for the next target. There was a nunchuck-like weapon hanging on Chen Qi's waist. At a glance, he might have thought it was just a simple iron rod. But only those in the military knew that this was not a nunchaku, let alone an iron rod. But a long spear. He carried this with him as a backup. Be careful. The Julie team was quietly approaching a stone-skinned rhinoceros. Stone-skinned rhinoceros is famous for its amazing defense power, and the layer of gray-brown skin on its body can bring it amazing defense power. The single horn on the head shone with a cold light. Zhang Ruya looked at the stone-skinned rhinoceros in front of her, hesitated and said to the captain, Zhao Juxin, Captain Zhao, I'm afraid we can't take the stone-skinned rhinoceros. We don't have people with strong combat talents in our team. It's probably impossible to break through the stone-skinned rhinoceros's defense. When the rest of the team members heard this, someone's eyes flickered and they looked at the expressionless Captain Zhao Juxin without saying anything. Some people showed contempt for Zhang Ruya's words. Zhang Ruya, you have an A-level strength enhanced combat talent, are you afraid of becoming like this? No, I just don't think we can kill Shipixi with our configuration. Zhang Ruya shook her head and explained. Pull you down, you are obviously scared. You need to understand your identity. You are a soldier. How do you know that our team can't kill the stone-skinned rhinoceros before we take action? Zhang Ruya's heart sank slightly. He looked at the expressions of the others, and then turned to look at the Captain Zhao Juxin. In the final analysis, Captain Zhao Juxin's opinion is the most important. Zhao Juxin's eyes paused on Zhang Ruya for a moment, then looked at everyone and said in a deep voice, we don't know what the results of other teams are. But so far we have only killed 2 second-level warrior beasts. This speed is too slow. I guess this time the recruitment competition is very likely to have other purposes. If you want to have a better future and obtain more resources, you have to fight hard. Holding back will not make you gain more points. Zhang Ruya's expression changed. Zhao Juxin's words were obviously talking about him. He wanted to open his mouth to refute, but after thinking about it, he finally said nothing. Zhang Ruya was too soft-tempered, which left Zhang Ruya without any chance to persuade her again. Zhao Juxin's voice continued. Zhang Ruya, you can choose to quit. As soon as these words came out, Zhang Ruya's expression suddenly changed. She looked up at Captain Zhao Juxin with a serious expression. Captain Zhao, I will not quit. But I still recommend not to take action against the stone-skinned rhinoceros. We are very likely to lose our numbers. Okay, are you the captain or am I the captain? Zhao Juxin raised his hand to interrupt Zhang Ruya. Since you don't plan to quit, then don't say anything else. In the final analysis, the stone-skinned rhinoceros is only at the 3rd level of a warrior. Our team is now all 1st level warriors. We can work together to deal with a strange beast at the 3rd level warrior level without any problems. Zhao Juxin is very confident in the strength of the team, and all this stems from the previous battle. 2 strange beasts at the 2nd level of warriors were killed, and Zhao Juxin began to swell. After saying this, Zhao Juxin no longer paid attention to Zhang Ruya, but quickly made attack arrangements. Zhang Ruya sighed in her heart, but she had no choice but to mobilize her A-level combat talent, Strength Enhancement. Cracking, the originally tall body became stronger and taller at this moment. This is the effect of the A-level talent Strength Enhancement. At this time, Zhang Ruya's face was full of flesh, like a miniature version of the Hulk. The sledgehammer was held in his hand, and his eyes were fixed on the stone-skinned rhinoceros not far away. In their team, except for Zhang Ruya, who is an A-level talent, and Zhao Juxin, who is an A-level earth element, the rest of the people are all C-level. Do it! Zhao Juxin shouted and waved his hand violently, and several sharp earth nails made of earth elements suddenly appeared under She Pixie's body. A-level combat talent earth element. Zhang Ruya's eyes changed, her body arched slightly, and her legs kicked hard on the ground. With a bang, the whole person disappeared instantly like an arrow from the string, and jumped towards the stone-skinned rhinoceros in the distance. The sledgehammer made a muffled sound, split the air, and hit the roaring stone-skinned rhinoceros. At this time, Chen Qi, Su Xingyuan and others were looking for the next target to attack. Get closer to the direction of the stone-skinned rhinoceros. 5-second level warrior beasts, 10 points, it seems a bit slow. Chen Qi used the innate skill of Eagle Eye to continuously search for traces of strange beasts. Today, 4 hours have passed since they entered Karamatsu County. There are still 44 hours left and the recruit competition assessment will end. Chen Qi was a little dissatisfied with this speed. 4 hours were spent in exchange for 10 points. But being limited by the strength of the team, they could only hunt down the strange beast steadily. Somewhere 800 meters away, dust was flying. It was also accompanied by the roars of strange beasts and bursts of slightly panicked shouts. Chen Qi raised his hand and looked in the direction where he was, and the sound reached the ears of Su Xingyuan and others through the tactical watch. At 3 o'clock, more than 800 meters away, if fighting is detected, do you want reinforcements? Su Xingyuan and others were resting at the moment, and the battle with the Flame Lion injured Ren Jianming in the team. Moreover, the continuous fighting consumes everyone's talents and skills very quickly. Talent skills are not unlimited, and each use requires a certain amount of mental energy. The short 4-hour battle left everyone except Chen Qi exhausted to varying degrees. Among them, Wang Er's healing talent consumes even more. Su Xingyuan also consumed a lot, but he had an A-level talent, and with the blessing of the War Spirit technique, his consumption had been restored by 30% in a short period of time. Chen Qi's voice reached everyone's ears through the tactical watch, and everyone opened their eyes and looked at Su Xingyuan, the captain. Report on each other's recovery status. Su Xingyuan made the decision without impulsiveness. Rather, it is necessary to make the most appropriate arrangement of combatants based on the situation of the team members. Wang Er spoke first. Consumption 50%, recovery 10%. Shui Nian, consumption 60%, recovery 10%. Ren Jianming, 50% consumption, 10% recovery. Others opened their mouths to report their consumption and recovery status. Chen Qi, how are you? Su Xingyuan asked. After 5 battles, Chen Qi's role has gradually evolved from a supporting role at the beginning into a combat role with a certain say. The members of the team were able to escape several dangers only by relying on Chen Qi to take action. Even Su Xingyuan needs to pay attention to Chen Qi at this moment. On the roof of an abandoned building somewhere, Chen Qi was holding a jet black alloy longbow in his hand, carrying a quiver on his back, bending slightly, and his amber eyes were constantly scanning the surroundings. Hearing Su Xingyuan's words, he replied without hesitation, "It costs 40% to fight." After receiving Chen Qi's situation, Su Xingyuan immediately nodded and said to everyone, "It seems that other teams are involved in the battle." As he spoke, he clicked on his watch, "Start towards the established position." As soon as the words fell, his figure quickly disappeared from the place. Warriors second level, speed 25 per second. The rest of the team members followed Su Xingyuan's footsteps. When Su Xingyuan and the others set off towards the designated location, Chen Qi on the roof of a certain building slightly bent his knees, jumped up, and went straight to the roof of another tall building. Ho! The stone-skinned rhinoceros was covered with gray skin, roaring and charging towards Zhao Juxin and others. The huge horn was flashing with cold light. Around them, 3 people had fallen to the ground, groaning in pain. Some people had a dent in their chests, and some people's arms formed a strange arc, hanging limply in front of them. Zhao Juxin regretted it at this moment. Regret that he did not listen to Zhang Rui's opinion. They rashly challenged Shipixi, who was beyond the strength of their team. In just 1 minute, the team was reduced in number. There are only 5 people left in the team of 8 people. Bang! The jet black alloy hammer hit Shipixi's side fiercely, knocking it aside. Zhang Rui exuded an extremely tough aura, panting heavily, and her eyes were red. By constantly using power to strengthen his talents, his consumption is the highest among all. If he hadn't interrupted Shipixi's attacks time and time again, I'm afraid it wouldn't be the current situation. Retreat. Zhao Juxin gritted his teeth, glanced at Shipixi who was blocked by Zhang Rui unwillingly, and finally issued the order to retreat. As soon as the words fell, the surrounding team members stopped their movements instantly, turned around and dragged the 3 injured comrades away from the battlefield. Zhang Rui, retreat. Zhao Juxin once again activated the innate ability of the earth element, and a cage made of earth covered the stone-skinned rhinoceros, trapping it inside. Bang, bang, bang. Trapped inside, the stone-skinned rhinoceros roared, and the horn on its head erupted with terrifying power, constantly hitting the cage in front of it. Zhang Rui gasped and stared bitterly at the trapped Shipixi in front of her. The stone-skinned rhinoceros in front of me is too strong. Even though their team had 2 A levels, 1 B level, and all members had C level talents, they actually didn't cause much damage to stone-skinned rhinoceros. The stone-skinned rhinoceros in front of him had a lot of white marks on his side, which were the marks left by the attack. The defense power is simply incredible. It blocked almost all their attacks, and the price it paid was the several white marks left on its body. Don't look at it, retreat quickly, it will rush out immediately. Zhao Juxin's face turned pale, and the cage made of earth elements was constantly being hit by the stone-skinned rhinoceros. In a short period of time, it was already on the verge of collapse. Zhang Rui's eyes suddenly shrank, and she turned to look at Zhao Juxin. I can't run away. The stone-skinned rhinoceros is very fast. Even if it is hiding in the ruins, it will be knocked away by its powerful force. Zhao Juxin, please withdraw. After saying that, he clenched the alloy sledgehammer in his hand and once again activated the innate skill strength enhancement. This was his last strength, and this time he wanted to block the stone-skinned rhinoceros again. Give other team members time to escape. Zhang Rui, thank you so much. The crumbling cage was instantly knocked open by stone-skinned rhinoceros. Blood spilled from the corner of Zhao Juxin's mouth and his face turned pale. Seeing Zhang Rui rushing towards Shipixi without hesitation, guilt flashed in his eyes. Zhang Rui, I am not the type to abandon my comrades. In front of Shipixi, there were 2 figures standing. One person holds a sledgehammer, and the other person holds a long knife. If we don't take action, their team will be destroyed. In the darkness, 2 soldiers in military uniforms quietly watched the scene in front of them. One person glanced at Zhao Juxin and Zhang Rui not far away, lowered his head and wrote down a battle evaluation on the information in his hand. Julie Squad Overall Rating, B+. Captain Zhao Juxin, Command Performance, D Level, Combat Performance, A. Team Member Zhang Rui, Combat Performance, A+. Quote. He hesitated for a moment, and finally changed the information in his hand. Write down a sentence. Don't abandon or give up in the face of crisis. Suggestions should be included in the plan. Take action. Looking at the 2 people who were at the end of their game not far away, the person in charge of rating nodded to the other person. This time, all the people responsible for rating and personnel safety in the dark are at the lowest level of the 7th level warrior. Although the stone-skinned rhinoceros has amazing defense, it is still fragile when facing a warrior who is already at the 7th level. etc. Just when that person was about to take action, another person suddenly raised his hand to stop his action. On the battlefield not far away, 3 figures rushed from a distance. Captain, Zhang Rüya. Captain, we are here. Captain, we will not abandon you. Zhao Juxin and Zhang Rüya looked at each other, and the voice ringing in their ears was so familiar. But now they feel helpless. Roll! Zhao Juxin roared angrily and slashed out with his knife, making the white marks on the stone-skinned rhinoceros become deeper, with blood oozing out. But at this moment, Zhao Juxin and Zhang Rüya had no time to pay attention to this detail. The reason why the two of them were able to resist Shipixie's attack at this moment was because of their strong willpower. The 3 figures running towards them from a distance seemed to have not heard Zhao Juxin's voice. Join the battlefield instantly. With the addition of 3 people, the pressure on the two of them suddenly eased. But it's just a trace. Even the 2 guys who are about to break through the second level of warriors can't stop the Shipixie in front of them. How long can the returning C-level and first-level warriors resist? But at this moment, the 2 of them could only try their best to seize the time to recover more strength. It's injured, attack that point. Zhang Rüya's eyes were fixed on the scar on Shipixie's body that was oozing out a trace of blood. This scar is very inconspicuous, and there is very little blood seeping out. If you don't look carefully, you won't notice it at all. Zhang Rüya's words fell on the ears of several people, which injected a new hope into everyone. Several people immediately cheered up. He used the little strength left in his body to attack the stone-skinned rhinoceros in front of him. Zhang Rüya. On the rooftop somewhere, Chen Qi was holding a black alloy longbow. His amber eyes changed slightly, and he immediately saw Zhang Rüya and others standing in front of Shipixie. Su Xingyuan and others were also approaching the battlefield at this moment. When he saw the situation on the field, Su Xingyuan's eyes narrowed slightly. Roar! The stone-skinned rhinoceros roared again, and the single horn above its head suddenly burst out with a strange light at this moment. The next second, Zhang Rüya and others' attacks suddenly stalled. The time was only 10,000ths of a millisecond, but with just such a slight pause, Shipixie had already approached the 3 people except Zhang Rüya and Zhao Juxin. With a bang, 3 figures were knocked out and landed heavily in an abandoned hotel not far away. All this happened so fast that before Zhao Juxin and Zhang Rüya could react, Shipixie's attack appeared in front of them again. Oh, I am Sao. Zhao Juxin only had time to utter a national quintessence cry, and then his whole body was also knocked out and hit the far wall heavily. After leaving a human-shaped mark on it, he fell to the ground and fell into coma in an instant. Past. The sudden changes one after another fell in Zhang Rüya's eyes, and he was a little confused. With a roar, the ground shook, and Shipixie crashed into Zhang Rüya with terrifying force. At this moment, he was at the end of his strength. No longer able to resist the stone-skinned rhinoceros attack, he could only watch the one horn flashing with cold light as it headed straight for his chest. The stone-skinned rhino's big eyes were full of indifference, and it was finally able to kill this hateful human being. At the moment when Shipixie's horn was about to reach Zhang Rüya's chest. Laugh. Buzz. 2 voices sounded at the same time. The silver arrow cut through the air and instantly hit the stone-skinned rhino's horn. The force was so powerful that it felt like its horn would fall off from the arrow. Before the stone-skinned rhinoceros could react, a spear surrounded by the power of thunder instantly cut through the sky, erupting with terrifying force and hitting its body heavily, sending its huge body flying sideways. The sudden change made Zhang Rüya couldn't help but look up. In front of his eyes, a silver arrow fell to the ground and a spear haunted by the power of thunder was stuck on the ground. Chen Qi immediately appeared in his mind, and Su Xingyuan's figure. Old Zhang, does my handsome face make you feel ashamed? Su Xingyuan laughed and pulled out his spear, and when he waved it, the power of thunder burst out. Xingyuan. Zhang Rüya looked excited and shouted excitedly. You. The appearance of Su Xingyuan made Zhang Rüya break away from the despair just now, and raised her eyes to look at Su Xingyuan and others who appeared in front of her. Su Xingyuan had a slight smile on his lips, and after saying hello to Zhang Rüya, his eyes fell on Shipixie not far away. I want to see if you can block my thunder. The spear burst out with thunderous power, and the rest of the team members joined in. Zhang Rüya fell to the ground, looking at Su Xingyuan and others fighting in front of her, with a smile on her face. Unlike Zhang Rui's fight, Su Xingyuan and the others fought closely together. Every move will deepen the scar on Shapixi's body. In a short period of time, the scars on Shapixi's body had expanded to the size of a palm. What shocked him the most was that Su Xingyuan and others were not afraid of Shapixi's counterattack. Every time the stone-skinned rhinoceros wanted to fight back, a silver arrow would always appear at the right time, stalling the stone-skinned rhinoceros attack. Two soldiers in military uniforms looked at the battle not far away in the dark, their expressions changing slightly. What a strong battlefield control! When the arrow blocked Shapixi's attack again, one person sighed in surprise. It is indeed very powerful. Although the overall strength of this team is stronger than that of Zhao Juxin and others before, the strength is also very limited. The key to suppressing Shapixi's counterattack was the person hiding in the dark. While the two were talking, the injuries on Shapixi's body had been expanded to a fatal level. Get out of the way! Su Xingyuan shouted. The power of thunder became more and more powerful, and a terrifying power of thunder suddenly erupted from the tip of the spear, blasting into the body of the stone-skinned rhinoceros. The stone-skinned rhinoceros was instantly paralyzed. The spear was violently grasped in his hand, and the tip of the spear almost tore the stone-skinned rhino's body in half. Roar! The stone-skinned rhinoceros roared in despair, and finally fell to the ground weakly, making no sound. Pulling out his spear, Su Xingyuan lowered his head and glanced at the stone-skinned rhinoceros on the ground, with a faint smile on his lips. He raised his eyes to look somewhere and grinned. Chen Qi smiled and nodded slightly. He held the jet-black alloy longbow in his hand and observed the abnormalities around him. The other team members began to clean the battlefield, and Wang Er and another healing talent began to treat Zhao Juxin and others. Zhang Ruya recovered some strength, and when he saw Su Xingyuan approaching, he was about to get up. Su Xingyuan waved his hand, sat on the ground nonchalantly, and grinned. Old Zhang, do you think I'm awesome? Don't look at it, Zhang Ruya replied. Su Xingyuan was stunned for a moment, then laughed. You're a bad example, Lao Zhang. What a cute girl, why did she turn into a man? Get lost, Zhang Ruya said angrily. They both laughed at the same time. After a while, Zhang Ruya looked at Zhao Juxin and others not far away. Her eyes fell on Su Xingyuan, and she asked curiously. Where's Chen Qi? Su Xingyuan raised his eyes, turned to look somewhere in the distance, and said with a faint smile, there is no need to look for him, he will appear at the right time. Zhang Ruya smiled bitterly. There is still a difference between strength-enhanced offensiveness and thunder. But compared with Chen Qi, an E-level archer, he still thinks he is stronger. However, in the battle just now, he clearly saw how the silver arrows flying through the air from outside the battlefield controlled the entire battlefield. Although Chen Qi was not on the battlefield, outside the battlefield, he seemed to be a powerful man aloof. Every movement on the battlefield cannot escape his eyes. As Su Xingyuan said, he will always take action at the right time. Is Chen Qi really an E-level talent? Zhang Ruya was a little confused. It's not like he hasn't seen archers before, but none of those people can compare to Chen Qi. The weakest ones are all A-level archer talents. Chen Qi's ability revealed at this moment has completely exceeded the ability of an E-level talent. Su Xingyuan looked slightly stunned and shook his head. I don't know. Anyway, I don't regard him as an E-level talent. I can't do the things he does. Zhang Ruya nodded and agreed with Su Xingyuan's words. The 8 members of their team had to pay the price of nearly all injuries before they were able to break through Shapixi's defense. If Su Xingyuan and the others hadn't arrived in time, their team would have been eliminated on the spot. Seeing Zhang Ruya's gloomy expression, Su Xingyuan patted his shoulder comfortingly and stood up. Has everything been cleaned? Wang Er, Xuanyan and other team members nodded. After being treated by Wang Er and others, the injuries of Zhao Juxin and his team have basically stabilized. Thank you. Zhao Juxin and others stood up and looked at Su Xingyuan and others who looked indifferent. My heart became increasingly bitter. They fought hard for so long, and were almost eliminated by everyone before they broke through the stone-skin rhinoceros defense. As soon as Su Xingyuan and others appeared, the battle was over in a short period of time. The gap between the two teams is too big. Zhang Ruya, Zhao Juxin and others stood together, watching Su Xingyuan and others leave. Zhao Juxin could no longer bear it and asked, Captain Su, can I ask a question? Su Xingyuan stopped and held the spear in his palm. He turned to look at Zhao Juxin and said with a smile, "What's the problem? Is his talent S?" Zhang Ruya was stunned for a moment, glanced at Zhao Juxin beside her with a strange expression, and said nothing. "Mao's S-class, that's an E-class archer." Su Xingyuan laughed loudly and did not directly answer Zhao Juxin's question. "Yes." Gone. Su Xingyuan and others left quickly, and Zhao Juxin was lost for a moment, as if trying to convince himself, it must be an S-level talent. "I'm sorry, brothers, I overestimated my capabilities before and caused you to be injured." Zhao Juxin came back to his senses, turned around and bent down to Zhang Ruya and others. "Captain, you didn't leave us and run away before, that's enough." "Yes, Captain, if you and Zhang Ruya hadn't blocked the stone-skinned rhinoceros, there's no telling what would have happened to us. It's over now, Captain, but you have to promise us not to challenge the third-level warrior beasts again. My body can't resist it again." Everyone was laughing and talking, and they were even in the mood to joke. "Old Zhang, thank you." Zhao Juxin nodded seriously to Zhang Ruya and punched his chest. Let's go find the second-level and first-level strange beasts. If we don't play with the third-level strange beasts, we won't look down on them." "Ha ha ha. What would Zhao Juxin's expression be like if he knew you were an E-level talented archer?" Su Xingyuan and his team were searching for strange beasts while chatting with Chen Qi, who didn't know where he was through their tactical watches. Chen Qi, who had just reached a certain commanding height, glanced around and listened to Su Xingyuan's smiling voice. He said helplessly, "What kind of evil are you doing?" He. Su Xingyuan chuckled. He deliberately didn't tell Zhao Juxin just now because of his bad taste. After being told by Chen Qi, he felt a little proud and turned back to look at Wang Er, Xuanyan and others behind him. Everyone laughed. Their purpose was naturally the same as Su Xingyuan. Su Xingyuan has this bad taste, and so do they. An E-level talent, archer, was actually thought to be S-level by Zhao Juxin. They found it interesting to think of Zhao Juxin's possible expression. Among the teams in the recruit competition assessment, apart from Su Xingyuan and his team, which have A-level combat talents, there are 6 other teams with their configuration. If you only look at the clear data, they are even much weaker. A-level combat talent, fire element, B-level combat talent, ice element, C-level and D-level, a total of 8 people. As the only A-level talent in the team, Sun Fa is a well-deserved captain. A battle had just ended and he breathed a sigh of relief. The flames in his eyes gradually dissipated, and when he looked up, he saw a huge earth-shattering elephant lying on the ground. Others in the group gasped. Earth-splitting elephant, the strength of the third-level warrior. Finally done, I'm exhausted. As the only B-level talent in the team besides Sun Fa, Zhou Ning had consumed a lot in the battle just now. Sun Fa's eyes flashed with excitement. The strength of their team is all warriors, which is similar to the strength of other teams. Sun Fa and Zhou Ning have reached the second level of martial arts. The talents of the two are also the most suitable for attacking, so the strength of their team will be much higher than other teams. It's really hard to get these points. Zhou Ning walked to Sun Fa and said. Sun Fa nodded. He thought that his team was not weak and could at least rank among the top 10 in this new recruit competition assessment team. With such strength, he has only gotten 20 points so far. It is conceivable that other teams will definitely not have too many points now. This recruit competition will assess a total of 7 A-level talents. Don't be careless. Sun Fa shook his head. Not knowing the points of other teams makes each team feel that its ranking may not be too high. Zhou Ning took a breath, took a sip of water and said, in addition to you, Captain Sun, there are 6 other A-level talents, including an A-level healing talent and an amplification talent. There are slightly more B-level players, but there is only one team that can be as good as ours. Compared with Sun Fa, Zhou Ning is more confident in his team's strength and points ranking. According to his estimation, their team is currently ranked at least in the top 3, and it is not impossible to even be first. Hopefully, let's go. Sun Fa did not explain too much, but asked everyone to leave and look for the next target. The direction they were heading was southeast. Southeast, 3 kilometers away from Sun Fa and his team. Su Xingyuan's voice sounded. Can Chen Qi do it? I'll try my best. Chen Qi's voice sounded. After receiving Chen Qi's answer, Su Xingyuan glanced at the team members in front of him, turned to look at the two figures not far away, and licked his lips, then do it. Those two figures were two strange beasts at the third level of warrior realm. Killing two third-level warrior beasts at once, such a record has never been achieved before in this recruitment competition assessment. Now, Su Xingyuan and the others planned to try. The source that gave them such strong confidence was not only the increasingly tacit understanding among everyone in fighting, but also Chen Qi lurking somewhere. Shang Han sat at the table, and the screen in front of him displayed the real-time ranking of the assessment team for this recruit competition and their real-time positions. The light from the screen reflected on his face, making his eyes glow. First place, 15 Beast Hunting Team, currently with 25 points. Second place, 8 Unknown Team, current points are 23. Third place, 2 Ice and Fire Team, current points are 20. Fourth place, 32 Wolong Team, current points are 18. The number in front of the team information represents the class it is in. Class 32. Shang Han looked from top to bottom, pausing for a moment on the name of Team Wolong, and then continued to look down. The recruit competition assessment is not only to test the strength of each team, but also to select various talents. These include but are not limited to talents with commanding ability, outstanding combat ability, outstanding treatment and other aspects. At the same time, everyone's performance in this recruit competition assessment will also be assessed. How to deal with crises, performance in battle and other aspects. In other words, this is not only a competition assessment for recruits, but also an assessment to select talents in the military. Try to bring out the best in everyone. This assessment had already been decided before Chen Qi and his group entered the army. After writing down the team rankings and names displayed on the screen, Shang Han opened the information in his hand. This contains all the information about the above teams, from each person's family background to their performance after joining the army. Everything is so detailed that even the person involved may not know that he has experienced certain things. Block it. The giant horned bull, which is 3 meters high, 5 meters long and weighs 4 tons, is roaring manically. 2 giant horned bulls that had reached the third level of warriors were surrounded. Su Xingyuan's whole body was surrounded by the power of thunder, and every attack from the spear in his hand was accompanied by the power of thunder, constantly bombarding the giant horned bull in front of him. The 2 giant horned bulls were obviously far beyond the strength of the entire team. But they still launched an attack on the giant horned bull without hesitation. Wang Er's body continuously emitted cyan light, which penetrated into the bodies of the others. Rapid healing restored everyone's strength. As the team leader, Su Xingyuan attracted most of the hatred as the main attacker. The rest of the team surrounded another giant horned bull. Buzz! The silver arrow accurately blocked the pair of spiral horns of the giant horned bull. Su Xingyuan looked indifferent. When the power of thunder burst out, the giant horned bull in front of him was already fighting in a trapped beast. At this time, the giant horned bull is the most dangerous. The ants are still alive, let alone the giant horned bull in front of them. The power of thunder flashed from the tip of the spear, making people look at it. Tisk! The wound that was originally only 20 centimeters widened to a full 50 centimeters under Su Xingyuan's blow. The blood immediately dyed the body of the giant horned bull red, and the shot also caused pain to the giant horned bull. White mist was sprayed out from his breath, and a pair of bull's eyes had already turned red. The blood-red bull's eyes stared at Su Xingyuan, who was holding a spear in front of him. Moo! The forelimbs were raised, then suddenly dropped, causing the ground to shake. The figures of the 2 people around him were swaying slightly, but their expressions remained unchanged. Su Xingyuan looked stern and pointed his spear sharply on the pair of horns of the giant horned bull. Dang! Sparks splashed. Whoosh! 2 silver arrows pierced the sky and arrived in an instant. While the giant horned bull was still competing with Su Xingyuan, the sound of 2 silver arrows that suddenly appeared sounded like a death knell. In an instant, he passed through the wound that had already expanded to 50 centimeters and passed through it from the other side. The arrow carried the internal organs of the giant horned bull, violently tearing them out. Moo! The giant horned bull screamed pitifully. The corner of Su Xingyuan's lips curled up into a smile, his eyes condensed, and a cold light flashed in them. The power of thunder from the tip of the gun exploded again, blasting into the body of the giant horned bull. Then he held the gun in both hands and stepped out with one step, as if he was holding an extended version of the pick. Bone knife. Tisk. The giant horned bull was instantly torn in half by the extremely sharp spear. It hit the ground with a thud. 3 points were obtained again, and at this time, the Wolong team's points had reached 21 points. The ranking has taken a step forward, ranking third. The spear shook, the blood was shaken off, and his eyes fell on another giant horned bull. When Chen Qi and the others were dealing with another giant horned bull, it was more than 900 meters away from them. The Ice and Fire team was approaching the direction where Su Xingyuan and others were. Zhou Ning looked indifferent, raised his eyes and glanced around. The abandoned county town has long been covered by vegetation, abandoned cars have also been submerged by vegetation, and the asphalt road has long been cracked. That is the result of vegetation rhizomes growing little by little underground. I have to lament the power of life. The county is so big, why can't we meet other A-level talented teams? Zhou Ning said with a sigh. The team with 20 points made Zhou Ning very curious about other teams at the moment. I was looking for other teams along the way. Sun Fa glanced sideways at Zhou Ning and said calmly, so what if we encounter him? Is it possible that you still want to compete with others? Hey, it's not impossible. Your A-level fire element talent, and my B-level ice element talent. Such a combination will definitely crush any team we meet. The only pity is that I can't compete with them. Unlike Sun Fa, Zhou Ning, who is a B-level ice element talent, is very curious about other teams. Sun Fa did not speak, but turned his head and looked into the distance. There are people fighting in front. Sun Fa spat out a sentence. Zhou Ning raised his eyebrows and said excitedly, let's go and have a look. After hearing what Captain Sun Fa said, the rest of the team members all looked excited. The excitement of Zhou Ning and others made Sun Fa feel helpless. Then go and have a look. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Ning's figure disappeared instantly. Someone is coming. From the commanding heights, the string of the jet black alloy longbow in Chen Qi's hand trembled, and a silver arrow flew into the battlefield, tearing open the wound on the giant horned bull, and his eyes swept across a figure. Su Xingyuan's expression remained unchanged, and the spear in his hand did not stop at all. Don't worry about it, let's deal with the giant horned bull. The rest of the people nodded in unison after hearing this. Then regardless of anything else, he continued to attack the giant horned bull. Hey, Zhou Ning appeared first. When he saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but let out a sigh. Giant horned bull, third-level warrior. He immediately recognized the strange beast in front of him. Captain Sun Fa followed closely behind and suddenly appeared. The two men's eyes first glanced at the battle in the field, and then involuntarily fell on another corpse not far away. 2. The two looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Facing two 3-level giant horned bulls at the same time. Is this possible? Chen Qi glanced at Sun Fa, Zhou Ning and others who were standing on the edge of the battlefield but didn't pay much attention. This group of people just stood on the sidelines and watched. As for taking action against Su Xingyuan and others on the battlefield. Regardless of the warrior's advance warning before the competition assessment, Chen Qi was also confident that he would stop or even kill Sun Fa, Zhou Ning and others as soon as they took action. What's more, among the team members, there is also Su Xingyuan, a captain with A-level talent. The A-level talent Thunder mainly attacks, and its own strength is definitely not weak. At the edge of the battlefield, Sun Fa and Zhou Ning looked at each other, with a hint of shock in their eyes. The team in front of them acted in perfect harmony. And the young man holding a spear was haunted by thunder. A-level talent Thunder. That is a talent that is more suitable for attacking than the two of them. Very strong. Sun Fa nodded and said. Zhou Ning nodded slightly and glanced at the rest of the people. Why do they only have 7 people in their team? Normally, the standard configuration of a team is 8 people. 2 amplification talents, 2 healing talents, and the rest are all combat talents. But there are only 7 people on the battlefield now. Where did the remaining person go? It may be that the number of soldiers was lost in the battle. Someone's eyes fell on the body of the giant horned bull not far away, and he said in surprise. Maybe, although their captain's talent is A-level Thunder, the overall strength is not too strong. With such strength, I think it is impossible to face 2 giant horned bulls at the 3rd level of warriors at the same time without reducing the number of troops. The rest of the team members behind him spoke out. In their view, although the Su Xingyuan in front of them was very strong personally, as they said, such a team was not enough to face 2 giant horned bulls at the same time without losing numbers. Zhou Ning also felt that what everyone said made sense. Their team is stronger than Su Xingyuan's team in front of them. But even with their strength, when faced with 2 giant horned bulls, it was absolutely impossible to kill them without taking any damage. Captain Sun Fa said nothing, his calm eyes staring at the battlefield in front of him. His eyes finally fell on a silver arrow on the ground. His eyes changed slightly. Archer talent. A silver arrow appears on the battlefield, but no one can be seen. The only possibility is that there is a person who has awakened the archer talent and is hiding in the darkness of the battlefield. Always observe every move on the battlefield. And his group, who were on the edge of the battlefield, had already fallen into the eyes of that archer's talent. He raised his eyes and glanced around, looked around and then looked away. No trace of the archer's talent was found, and doubts flashed in his eyes. Is it possible that the archer Tien person has been reduced in number? Since the battle started, he has not seen anyone except the 7 people on the battlefield take action. Hearing the speculations of the team members behind him, he couldn't help but nodded inwardly. It seems that there has indeed been a battle attrition. In the battlefield, Su Xingyuan and the others didn't know what Sun Fa was thinking. The giant horned bull was furious. Su Xingyuan's attack made it furious. The moment it forced Su Xingyuan back, a pair of huge spiral horns suddenly attacked the 2 people beside it. Extremely fast. All this fell into Sun Fa's eyes. His pupils shrank sharply and his whole body tensed up. Be careful. Different from his reaction, when everyone on the battlefield saw the giant horned bull's movements, they did not dodge, and the attacking movements in their hands did not stop. I don't want my life. Sun Fa's face darkened and he was about to take action. And just when he was about to take action, a sharp sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded. Looking up, a silver light flashed away very quickly. In his surprised eyes, he hit the pair of giant horns of the giant horned bull with great precision. Dang! Sparks flew. The arrow was packed with powerful power and instantly collided with the giant horn, making a sound of gold and iron. Just like that, the attack of the giant horned bull passed by their bodies. The 2 people on the battlefield were like dancers dancing on the tip of a knife. And behind their group of dancers, there was an invisible big hand controlling them. All they need to do is pull the string in their hands at the right time to get them out of the crisis safely. The scene just now fell into Zhou Ning's eyes. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help shouting, his wide eyes full of disbelief. The other team members behind him collectively fell into a state of petrification. Captain Sun Fa was also stunned on the spot. He stared blankly at the people fighting in front of him. The scene just now kept reappearing in his mind, and the sound of the collision of arrows and giant horns echoed in his ears. Who is this person? Sun Fa came back to his senses, clenched his fists fiercely, and swallowed uncontrollably. The timing of the silver arrow's appearance shocked him. What shocked him even more was the 2 people who just didn't dodge. It was as if they had anticipated that the arrow would appear, and they would be safe and sound. How much trust does this require? Such trust is absolutely impossible for new recruits. Only veterans who have been through enough battles can have such trust. But he knew very well that the group of people in front of him were recruits like himself. It has been almost a month since I joined the army. Establishing such a sense of trust cannot be established by relying on a few promises and a few words of comradeship. This is something that takes countless battles to build. But how long has it been? After all the calculations, it has only taken more than 10 hours. After more than 10 hours of establishment, all members of the team can give unlimited trust to the person in the dark. This is almost like putting your life in the hands of another person unconditionally, and if that person has any intention, he can destroy this trust with just a flick of his finger. Did you see it clearly? Sun Fa looked at Zhou Ning next to him with a complicated expression. Yeah, Zhou Ning no longer had the relaxed smile on his face, but was replaced by a serious look on his face. His eyes were confused. Is it possible that he is S-class? It is self-evident who he is talking about. Sun Fa smiled bitterly, and his eyes fell back on the battle not far away. At this moment, the battle is almost over, and the giant horned bull is at the end of its fight. The man with the archer talent did not take action again. It seems that his main purpose is to ensure the safety of everyone on the battlefield. Compared to Su Xingyuan, Chen Qi, who is hiding in the dark, is more like a captain. Sun Fa also wanted to know Zhou Ning's question. S level. I haven't heard of anyone among the recruits awakening S level talents. The two of them were confused. In the battlefield, when Su Xingyuan held a spear in his hand and ended the life of the giant horned bull in front of him, he stood on the corpse of the giant horned bull, holding a spear in his hand, and raised his eyes to look at Sun Fa and others. Sun Fa hesitated for a moment, then led Zhou Ning and other team members towards Su Xingyuan and others. He looked around, his eyes wandering over the people who were busy cleaning up the battlefield, and finally settled on Su Xingyuan's face, smiling and nodding to him. At the same time, Zhou Ning was also looking at the surrounding environment, trying to find the 8th member of the team. Su Xingyuan smiled and nodded. Su Xingyuan. After saying that, he glanced at Zhou Ning and others who were constantly looking around, and smiled at the corners of his lips. Is something wrong? Looking sideways at Zhou Ning and others, Sun Fa coughed heavily. Zhou Ning sneered. Their actions just now were too deliberate. It was almost written on their faces that they needed to find Chen Qi. Sun Fa was also a little embarrassed, but he still smiled and said, if you can kill a giant horned bull without any injuries while reducing the number of people in the battle, Captain Su, your team is very strong. He deliberately mentioned the words, reduction in battle numbers, and then mentioned killing one without taking any damage. The meaning is already obvious. These words were meant to be flattering, but in reality they were probing. He smiled and shook the spear to shake off the blood of the alien beast stained on the spear. Holding up 2 fingers. Not 1, but 2. Sun Fa. Omega D Omega. Zhou Ning. Sigma Su degree D degree winking face Su. Others. W opening parenthesis D W. Zhou Ning frowned. His eyes moved back and forth on the bodies of the 2 giant horned bulls. He looked up at Su Xingyuan, and asked in confusion, you mean you killed the 2 giant horned bulls without any injuries? The more he thought about what he said just now, the more he felt it was wrong. Su Xingyuan did not explain the attrition in the battle, but emphasized too. Does this mean they killed 2 giant horned bulls without any injuries? Sun Fa frowned and shook his head slightly. He didn't think that Su Xingyuan and others in front of him had the strength to face 2 giant horned bulls at the same time without being injured. Although the 8th person in their team is very strong, it should not be enough to make up for such a gap. Unless that person's talent is really S level. It's just a pity that the number of times that person took action was too few, so they couldn't make an accurate judgment on him. Su Xingyuan smiled, raised his eyes to look somewhere, then looked at Sun Fa, Zhou Ning and others, and said lightly, it's just 2 giant horned bulls, is it difficult? Gone. He was tricked. Sun Fa and Zhou Ning complained in their hearts at the same time. After coming back to his senses, he looked at Su Xingyuan with complicated eyes. After a long time, Sun asked, Captain Su, where is the 8th member of your team? Can I get to know him? Zhou Ning's eyes were filled with anticipation. Not only did Sun Fa want to see that person, but even the team members behind him wanted to see with their own eyes what the person who could control the rhythm of the entire battlefield looked like. How strong is he? Wang Er, Xuanyan and others have finished cleaning the battlefield, and the 2 alien beast crystal cores in their hands are shining brightly. After hearing what Sun Fa and others said, Wang Er and others all smiled. Su Xingyuan shrugged. There will be a chance, but not now. Let's talk about it after the recruit competition assessment is over. He politely rejected Sun Fa and others' request to get to know Chen Qi. All right. After being rejected, Sun Fa didn't ask any more questions, but nodded towards Su Xingyuan and others. Su Xingyuan didn't say much, nodded slightly and was about to leave. Zhou Ning suddenly said, Captain Su, how many points does your team have? Although I don't know the person in Su Xingyuan's team, it should still be possible to inquire about the points. As expected, Su Xingyuan and others turned back to look at Zhou Ning, Sun Fa and others. He smiled lightly and said, not many, 24. Gone. Captain Su, Sun Fa and the others are not weak either. Wang Er said, looking at the backs of Sun Fa and others leaving. Sun Fa and others were not much surprised when they saw that Su Xingyuan had awakened an A-level talent for thunder. This meant that Sun Fa and others were most likely to have A-level talents. Su Xingyuan nodded. Maybe it's an A-level talent, and Zhou Ning should be a B-level talent. The two warriors at the second level should be among the top 5 among the teams assessed in this recruit competition. Shuan Yan and Ren Jianming said with smiles, Captain Su, do you think we can beat them? Su Xingyuan said angrily, why don't you do it? You want to be gay. This is a competition assessment for new recruits, don't talk nonsense. The two nodded repeatedly. If we go by our apparent strength, we will definitely not be able to do it. However, our strength cannot be viewed from ordinary people's perspective. Wang Er and others were immediately speechless. Yes, their team cannot be looked at with ordinary eyes. An A-level thunder talent, a B-level healing talent, a bunch of C-level, D-level talents, and an E-level archer talent. Anyone who sees this configuration will frown. What a mess of configurations. An A-level thunder leads a team of rotten fish and shrimps. But with such a configuration, he managed to score 24 points, ranking second among the entire recruit competition assessment team. The number 1 hunting team now has 28 points. On the screen hanging in the office, Wolong team, which was originally ranked 4th, has now become second. First place, 15 Beast Hunting team, currently with 28 points. Second place, 32 Wolong team, current points are 24. Third place, 8 Unknown team, current points are 23. Fourth place, 2 Ice and Fire team, current points are 20. Shang Han raised his eyes to look at the changed team rankings. When he saw the Wolong team, he couldn't help but glance sideways at Wu Lui. Everyone present was paying attention to the ranking of their respective teams. The sudden rise in the ranking of the Wolong team made everyone present look askance. 6 points added at once. The squad leader of Class 15 raised his eyebrows with a look of surprise. Someone also saw the sudden change in the points of Wolong team. After thinking about it, he looked at Wu Lui and asked with a smile, Lao Wu, you can do it. You have found a treasure. I remember the captain of this team is called Su Xingyuan, right? A-level combat talent, thunder. Wu Lu looked calm and nodded slightly, but he was already laughing in his heart. To be able to kill 2 third-level warrior beasts with the strength of an A-level thunderbolt and a second-level warrior, I have to say that you have really found a treasure. Haha, that's right, Lao Wu, you've got it this time. Why haven't I encountered an A-level talent? You still want A-level talents. You have 3 B-level talents in your team, so just have fun with them. Everyone made fun of them one after another, and then changed the topic to the currently number 1 hunting team. Although the Wolong team is very strong, it is ultimately unable to support itself. It is almost impossible for an A-level talent to lead a team of B-level and below talents to win first place. Yes, otherwise Feng Quan is just lucky. With 1 A-level talent and 4 B-level talents, the configuration of this team is not too high. Tisk, tisk, 28 points, it seems that Feng Quan is going to treat everyone to dinner. Before this competition assessment had even begun, the squad leaders of their new recruits had already discussed that if their team came first, they would treat everyone to dinner. Judging from the overall strength of each team and the current points, Feng Quan's hunting team should be in first place. All the people's teasing fell into Feng Quan's ears. He suppressed his laughter and waved his hand. It's only been a dozen hours now, and the final ranking is not yet certain. Feng Quan looked at Wu Lui and smiled honestly. You think so, Lao Wu? Wu Lui, my fist is so hard. Wu Lui's fist became hard. Feng Quan's hunting team, Captain Zhang En, has an A-level healing talent. There are 5 B-level talents in the team, including 1 healing talent and 4 combat talents. The remaining 2 are C-level augmentation talents. Such a team configuration should not be too strong if placed in the team being assessed in this recruit competition. Although the A-level Thunderbolt is strong, Su Xingyuan is only 1 person. On the other hand, Zhang En and his team are much better than Su Xingyuan and his team in terms of their own strength and talent. Wu Lui said angrily, Old Feng, just have fun secretly. You're lucky, kid. Everyone laughed out loud. Both Feng Quan and Wu Lui were at the martial arts level, but Wu Lui was at the 4th level of martial arts, while Feng Quan was at the 3rd level. The two usually compete secretly. This time, the two were competing again in the recruit competition assessment. Only this time, Feng Quan's luck was better. He really didn't know how to lose a team with almost all B-level talents. With such strength, the advantage lies with me. Oh, Lao Wu, don't be discouraged. Maybe there will be another opportunity later. Feng Quan said with a smile. Shang Han did not stop the bickering between the two. That's the way it is in the military, there's always competition. Rather than violently interfering, he chose to let everyone compete, but he just set the rules, not to use dirty tricks, let alone take action against his comrades. In this case, the competition among the companies under Shang Han was the most intense. At the same time, the strength is also very strong. He lowered his head and glanced at the information in his hand again, a glint flashing in his eyes. Attack from the side. Be careful, kill this one, and we can rest today. In the dark night, figures one after another were constantly attacking a 3rd-level warrior's earth-shattering elephant. A young man in military uniform, with a determined face and shining eyes. A long knife was held diagonally in his hand, and he was constantly directing the attacks of others. This team cooperated very well. Under the command of Zhong'an, everyone cooperated closely. In a short period of time, the earth-shattering elephant of the 3rd-level warrior was already covered with scars. As the light of the knife flashed in Zhong'an's hand, the long knife sank into the head of the cracking ground elephant, leaving only the handle. Blood spurted. Zhong'an stood on the body of the earth-splitting elephant and raised his eyes to look at the people in front of him. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Let's take a rest first. After cleaning the battlefield, we can rest today. After saying this, everyone smiled excitedly. From the moment they entered Tangsong County, their team did not dare to stop looking for traces of strange beasts. After so long of searching and fighting, everyone was already tired. Although they are warriors, in the final analysis they are only 1st or 2nd level warriors. The training of the war spirit technique is only at the 1st level, and the speed of power recovery cannot keep up with the consumption. The most important thing is mental consumption. Although the war spirit method can also restore the spirit, the speed is very slow. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately lay on the ground regardless of his appearance, breathing heavily. I've never been so tired. Who? Me too. Team Zhang, our points should be number 1 now, right? Someone was sitting against the wall with a smile on his face. When the rest of the people heard this, their expressions perked up and they all looked at Zhong'an. It should be. Zhong'an nodded with a smile. He has an A-level healing talent and leads a team with almost all B-level members. This configuration is quite luxurious. Zhong'an knows very well how difficult it is to score 31 points. Even with such a strong configuration, their team has only scored 31 points so far. You can imagine the speed of other teams. This answer made everyone excited. Someone said, Captain Zhang, I have never won the 1st place since I was a child. This time I got it. Haha, you kid. Laugh. A silver arrow, like the sharpest knife, roughly split the night. There was a sharp sound that broke through the air. The arrows flew and kept spinning. Fully draw the bowstring with a force of 2,500 kilograms, and then release your fingers. The arrows are infused with greater power and speed. The rapidly rotating arrow shot into the head of the giant horned bull in the blink of an eye. The powerful force on the arrow carried the body of the giant horned bull, flying a full meter away, and was nailed to the ground. Phew. Wang Er and others all breathed a sigh of relief. Shuan Yan, Ren Jianming and other weaker people felt weak all over. He immediately entered sage mode. After this period of time, everyone has a deep feeling of the recovery effect of the war spirit technique. The continuous fighting had already exhausted the strength of Shuan Yan, Ren Jianming and others. Wang Er Qiang braced himself and walked to Shuan Yan and others. The B-level healing talent was activated, and the strange energy flowed into everyone's body through his palm. Although Chen Qi exists in their team, he will always take action to resolve the crisis at critical moments. But the energy they expended was real. Su Xingyuan glanced at the people who had entered the sage mode, and the tip of the spear penetrated the giant horned bull's head without any obstruction, and then gave it a fierce pick. An alien beast crystal core fell into his hands. It's now 3 o'clock in the morning. A day of fighting made everyone feel extremely exhausted. Even he felt a little tired. Chen-Chi, how are you? Su Xingyuan sat down on the body of the giant horned bull, and his voice reached Chen-Chi through the tactical watch. Very good. Footsteps sounded, and Chen-Chi's figure appeared in front of Su Xingyuan and others. In just one day, Chen-Chi showed up only a handful of times. He is like a ghost, you don't know his location, but he is always paying attention to you. It was precisely because of Chen-Chi who was wandering outside the battlefield that they were able to achieve this without any combat attrition. Points skyrocketed. Here, throwing the alien beast crystal core in his hand to Chen-Chi, Su Xingyuan looked at Chen-Chi and sighed. If I hadn't repeatedly confirmed that you had indeed awakened the E-level archer talent, I would definitely in Zhao Juxin they also think you were an S-level person. Chen-Chi smiled and shrugged. The black alloy longbow was held in his hand, exuding a sharp aura. Su Xingyuan felt a little curious. Are all archers as strong as Chen-Chi? From the time Chen-Chi took action until now, he has never made a mistake. No matter how chaotic the battlefield is, he can always shoot the arrow in his hand at the most appropriate time. Then help them avoid danger. He shook his head and threw this strange thought aside. Chen-Chi, do you know how many points we have now? Su Xingyuan's tone was filled with excitement. It's 53. Chen-Chi thought for a while and said with a smile. Haha, yes, 53 points. Su Xingyuan couldn't help but curse. His expression was full of excitement. Before you know it, a day has passed. Earn 53 points in one day. How can such a record not make Su Xingyuan excited? On a screen hanging in the office. Occasionally the numbers change. Wu Lui was the only figure in the entire office. The others had already gone to rest. He can't sleep. Feng Quan and he have been competing with each other for a long time. Today, Feng Quan's team won first place, although it is not the final ranking yet. But he still felt uncomfortable. Especially when Chen-Chi and the others reached second place in points, he felt even more uncomfortable, and a hint of expectation arose in his heart. What if you become number one? At this moment, he was staring blankly at the first line on the screen with his eyes wide open. First place. 32, Wolong team, current points are 53. Wu Sao, what happened during the few hours I was away? Life is really full of surprises. Wu Lui swallowed, glanced around, rubbed his eyes and confirmed the numbers on the screen again. 53 points. He just felt very excited. The second place hunting team currently only has 31 points. The gap between the two teams is 22 points. Each second-level warrior beast is worth 2 points, and there are 11 second-level warrior beasts between the two teams. Are these fools on drugs? Wu Lui didn't understand why Chen-Chi's team's points increased so quickly. At this moment, everyone in the Wolong team has fallen asleep peacefully. In an abandoned building, 7 people were lying on the ground casually. Xuanyan and Ren Jianming had fallen asleep. But Su Xingyuan couldn't sleep. He turned his head and looked at the figure holding a black alloy longbow not far away, with confusion in his eyes. Chen-Chi took the initiative to keep vigil, rotating every 2 hours. E-level archer talent. Su Xingyuan had doubts in his eyes and softly uttered a slightly doubtful sentence. This sentence was not what he said to Chen-Chi, it was just a person talking to himself. When he first met Chen-Chi, he actually had a sense of superiority. A-level combat talent. Thunder, such a talent can attract people's attention no matter where it goes. An E-level combat talent, Archer, seems to be a person from 2 different worlds compared to him. Perhaps it was because Chen-Chi gave him good senses, or for other reasons, that he pulled Chen-Chi into this team. Combat auxiliary role, this is Chen Qigong's position in this team from the beginning. But from the moment that Silver Arrow came through the air and pulled him back from the edge of serious injury, he knew that he was wrong. It took a total of 3 months of recruit training, and now just 1 month later, there is suddenly a recruit competition assessment. It's really tiring. Su Xingyuan's voice sounded, and a pair of eyes emitted a little light in the dark night. The faint moonlight reflected in Chen-Chi's amber eyes. Looking closely, his eyes were blood red at the moment. There was nothing unusual around him. Chen-Chi turned his head and looked at Su Xingyuan. The innate skill of Eagle Eye allows him to see Su Xingyuan and others clearly in the dark night like watching fire. With the continuous improvement of strength, 3's talent Hui seems to be slowly revealing his true face. Take 100 steps to pierce the Yangtze River and let your arrows hit the target. Eagle Eye insight allows you to see further and be more keen on the timing of action and judgment of crises. Now his strength has reached the 3rd level of warrior and is about to enter the 4th level. Although 3's talent is very strong, Chen Qi discovered that it consumes more resources than others. Su Xingyuan has already entered the 3rd level of martial arts, and is in the same realm as himself. Suppressing the thoughts in his mind, Chen Qi sat against the wall with a black alloy longbow at his hand and an alloy rod in his hand. Seeing the tiredness on Su Xingyuan's face, Chen Qi smiled and said, "It's been 3 months in total, and this is only 1 month. When you say that, I feel even more tired." Su Xingyuan shook his head, raised his head slightly, smoothed the broken hair in front of his forehead with his left hand, and said helplessly, "So many admiring eyes fell on me, I am very stressed. There is no way, people who are too good will always bear so much pressure." Chen Qi twitched the corners of his mouth and his fists became hard. Su Xingyuan was always thinking about how to show off, but he always found a strange angle to show off successfully. "How did you live for so many years?" Chen Qi rolled his eyes at him, his words full of ridicule. "What are you talking about?" Su Xingyuan glanced sideways in Chen Qi's direction. He didn't have the gift of eagle eye insight, so he could only vaguely see Chen Qi's appearance. "If you're handsome, you can't pretend to be cool. It's called showing off. This is what I call being cool." After saying this, he couldn't help laughing, and Chen Qi smiled silently. Neither of them spoke, and the surrounding area became quiet. Chen Qi didn't know what Su Xingyuan was thinking. He was thinking about Chen Yao, Chen Hao and his parents. He was actually forced to join the army. If it weren't for what Li Ji said, "Your father is just a maggot in the sewer, and so are your whole family." This sentence completely overwhelmed his reason, and he punched Li Ji in the face. However, this was the punch that Li Ji was waiting for. Chen Qi had only seen the number 1 million in books. Maybe 1 million is very simple for people like Li Ji, but for Chen Qi and his family, let alone 1 million, even 100,000 will crush the entire family. "Chen Qi, why did you join the army?" Su Xingyuan suddenly spoke, his tone not as relaxed as before, but with a hint of melancholy. Chen Qi was stunned for a moment and sat against the wall. There was a window next to him. The weak moonlight passed through the window and fell on Chen Qi's side. He raised his hand and clenched his fists with his fingers. A calm voice sounded, "Because being poor and weak is the original sin." Su Xingyuan's eyelids twitched and his gaze fell on Chen Qi. Although he couldn't see Chen Qi's face clearly, the words uttered from Chen Qi's calm voice made him feel tense all over. Chen Qi did not explain too much and chuckled, "Xingyuan, do you think what I said is right?" Su Xingyuan was stunned for a moment, then nodded and shook his head, "I don't know. Would you like to hear a story?" Before he could answer, Chen Qi's calm voice sounded again. An 18-year-old boy, because he had a few words with a beautiful girl, was surrounded by a group of well-dressed and well-off families. Boys are verbally abusive. Several people surrounded him and beat him up. He was angry. The anger in his heart drowned out the pain in his body, so he fought back. Quote, "One punch, just that." Chen Qi's voice did not change at all, as if he was telling an unrelated story. The group of people asked him to compensate 1 million yuan, but he refused to accept it. All this was just his passive counterattack, so he went to the school director and principal. What he didn't know was how powerful the group of people who surrounded him was. The principal looked at him coldly and said it was all the boy's fault. Drop out of school or pay compensation, this is a difficult choice. "So you came to join the army?" Su Xingyuan narrowed his eyes, with a hint of suppressed anger in his voice. "Yeah, that's why I came to join the army. It's not just the compensation deal with that group of people, but more importantly, I want to become stronger. To me now, they are like a tall mountain. Even if I look up and try my best to look at them, I can't see any hope of being able to climb over them. They disdain me and despise me. Being poor and weak is the original sin. Su Xingyuan, what do you think I should do?" Chen Qi looked at Su Xingyuan with amber eyes flashing and asked with a smile on his lips. "You." Su Xingyuan clenched his fist fiercely and spoke from between his teeth. Haha, yes, I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.